Chips, peas, I think one of those curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Immigration is coming down. Net immigration. No, really, it's coming down. It's been way too high and it's coming down. So significantly going to fall over the next few years, according to the Prime Minister in his speech about an hour and a half ago. Well, we'll be talking all about that, and whether you are listening to us on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, it's great to have your company. It'd be great also to hear from you as well, particularly on the immigration issue. But the Prime Minister has published the government's white paper tackling spiralling immigration, but there is no cap on numbers. Why not? Oh, because they've all failed before. Not the strongest argument, Prime Minister. And under the plans, there'll be 50,000 fewer visas for lower skilled workers, including care workers, while skilled visas will require graduate degrees for the first time. So you actually have to have a skill, apparently. Migrants will also have to wait up to 10 years before they can apply for citizenship. That's doubling the current 5 years, while judges' powers to block deportations using human rights laws will be curbed. I'd love to hear from you on that. What is your reaction? Net migration will fall, in the words of the Prime Minister, significantly by the end of this Parliament, by 2029. But no cap on numbers. What is your reaction? Do you trust him? Do you believe him? Will it happen? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Also going to be talking about Ukraine. Is there a possibility of a ceasefire? Ukraine's President Zelensky has said he is willing to meet Vladimir Putin for direct talks in Istanbul on Thursday, with or without a ceasefire, effectively calling Putin's bluff after the Russian president put forward a proposal for talks after European leaders threatened him with fresh sanctions if Russia fails to comply with an unconditional 30-day ceasefire starting today. Meanwhile, Hamas has said it will release Eden Alexander. He's a 21-year-old US-Israeli soldier who's believed to be the last living American hostage in Gaza, with the release expected either today or tomorrow ahead of Trump's visit to the Middle East. So much more to talk about on the show. I hope you stay tuned. We've got an awful lot to talk about. Delighted to say that commentator Sam Armstrong joins us. Lovely to see you. I miss you when we have bank holidays, when I'm gallivanting away.
I know, it's the great joy of doing Mondays, is that I do get a few more days off a year than everybody else.
He means that nicely about you all, by the way. He means that nicely, not about wanting to not see you all. Where do we start today? Because there's an awful lot to talk about, is there not today? Because Keir Starmer has made this big pledge, an immigration white paper, and let's be honest, you could absolutely hear any Tory Prime Minister announcing what Keir Starmer has announced today. Indeed, if any Tory Prime Minister had announced what Keir Starmer announced today, Keir Starmer would be first at the dispatch box, first on social media, first in the TV studios, decrying it and saying how awful it was, how immoral it was, and how important immigration was, because diversity is our strength, and the economic benefits of migration, and how it's absolutely terrible that we shouldn't be open to business from the rest of the world. Now he's in power. Now he's seen those results from Reform UK at the local elections, the Runcorn by-election. It seems Keir Starmer has changed his tune. Of course, he denied that this morning. No, this isn't because of the threat at the last elections and the threat that is posed by where Reform are in the polls. No, he said. It's because he believes in tackling higher net migration and getting it down. The trouble is, Prime Minister, no one believes you. Voters don't believe you. I doubt many of your MPs believe you. I doubt your cabinet believes you. I doubt your family believes you. I don't think even you believe it at all. When you say that you need to get immigration down, but you refuse to set a cap to what you think it should be, because the last few caps have all failed, I remember the simpler, happier times of tens of thousands of migrants coming to this country, not the hundreds of thousands we currently have. But when you have no cap, we can't believe a word you say, because every single government in the last 20, 30 years has seen immigration go up, not down. Even the Home Office prediction is for a net migration number of more than 500,000 a year. That is 200,000 or 300,000 more than where it was when we voted for Brexit to take back control. And by the way, Prime Minister, when you use the phrase take back control in your speech, in your statements, in your social media postings on immigration, we think you actually have to do what you said you were going to do. And controlling it doesn't mean allowing it to go up, but you get to decide who's coming. If you can't even control the young men of fighting age arriving on our beaches by dinghies from Calais every single day, and we're up to, 11,500 already so far this year, 40% up on where we were at this time last year, how on earth do we think you're going to be able to control the visas that you yourself hand out when you won't control the welfare system to make sure that the 5,000 people who are of working age who could be getting a job but choose not to because a life on benefits is easier than working in a care home on low wages or doing any other worthwhile job that we need to be done in this economy. If you're not willing to tackle that, you're not really serious about this at all, are you? So when you say it's because you believe in it, I'm sorry, but no one believes you. Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Sam Armstrong, do you believe Keir Starmer?
You said it best just at the start. This is a speech that could have been given by any of the last 6 Prime Ministers we had in recent years.
That's just the last 5 years, isn't it? We've had a lot of them.
This is the best example I've seen in ages of Nigel is coming, look busy politics. We're going to stand up, we're going to put ourselves behind a fancy lectern and we're going to say that we're going to sort it, and we're going to do nothing of the sort. This is a speech that is premised upon looking like we're doing something, pretending to the public we're doing something, but doing absolutely nothing. The Prime Minister says he wants net migration to fall significantly by the end of the decade. By then, with migration, and of course net migration excludes all of the Brits that are going off to the Algarve or Benidorm or Marbella, they're all out. So when you've got migration running at 900,000, what you actually mean is 1.2 million foreign people.
That's what it was in 2023.
Arriving in the country every year. If that carries on for 5 years, this country will cease to exist. We are a people of 70 million population. If 5 million arrive in 5 years, the whole country will have changed and will have changed forever.
And 86% currently are non-EU arrivals. Now, why is that significant? Well, they're largely economic migrants from much poorer countries. The vast majority low skilled. They're not all doctors and physicists, I'm afraid. They really aren't. And they are people who are coming here working on low wages, below average wages, doing, we're told, the jobs that Brits won't do. But the only reason Brits won't do them is because they don't have to do them, because they're given the option of sitting on benefits. We don't need to import these people. But the crucial thing, as you say there, is one of the things announced today is the language requirement. Well, yeah, good luck with that, because I thought we had a language requirement already, but it's GCSE level, but now it's going to be A level, but it's going to be for dependents as well as the immigrants. But the reality is we have now, 1.5 million people here who live here, come from abroad, who don't, to all intents and purposes, speak pretty much any worthwhile English at all. You can't get a great job unless you happen to be a multimillionaire and you're running some multi-million business. I think they may be in the minority. You're not getting a job. You're not getting a great job. You're not going to be earning enough to be a net contributor. You're not integrating in the local community. You're not even able to chat with your neighbours, for goodness sake. So this is an absolute nonsense. Does this represent in any way a reality check for Keir Starmer, even if they're doing it for the wrong reasons, which is, we think that Reform are going to take our red wall seats. We don't really believe in it, but we're going to do it anyway, which is what they're actually doing. If they did actually do any of this, and bearing in mind, I mean, even Boris Johnson, who Mr. Take Back Control in 2019, he saw the Boris wave, million plus people coming in a year. We know that numbers are going to go down anyway because of the changes Rishi Sunak introduced in the year he was in office. So that's going to happen anyway. But we also, the Home Office working on this view that there's going to be 525,000 a year net migration until the end of this decade. So a default 500,000 more people coming in every year over people leaving. And as you say, that'll probably mean 750,000 plus new arrivals. If they did get it down to below that, would that be enough for voters?
Absolutely, categorically, 100% not.
No.
500,000 people arriving in the country every year would be, historically, in the top, every year it's happening, third or fourth highest year in history.
Yeah.
No culture in all of human history has successfully assimilated this many people. And that's based on people coming a short distance. And let's be clear about who is coming here. These are overwhelmingly men of, as you say, fighting age, overwhelmingly from Middle East, North African countries. Now, study after study taken around Europe shows that those migrants perform absolutely on every metric the worst. As Kemi Badenoch has said, not all cultures are equal. And these people do not share our language. In great too many ways, they do not share our values, and hundreds of thousands of them are being waved in every year. And will people notice that?
Yes, they will.
Yes, they will notice it. Because
well, not in Keir Starmer Street.
But you can go up any high street, anywhere in the British Isles, and you will have noticed the change in recent years. You will notice the gangs of men gathering outside up to no good. You will have noticed the fact that every other shop on your high street now seems to be a Turkish barber that just so happens to only take cash. Oh, I wonder why that could be. We can see it with our eyes. We are not going to accept the barefaced lies that the Westminster class have got away with for the last 20 years.
You mentioned the cultural issues. You're a racist and a bigot. You're wrong about the economy because mass migration is a massive boon to the economy, except we've not seen any increase in productivity in 20 years. We've stagnated in terms of our economy for 20 years. And when we're told, like, oh, diversity is our strength, all these amazing people coming in, I mean, yeah, there will be some amazing people. I mean, we want to welcome those people. Come on in, the water's lovely. In the same way that those countries will want to welcome our best and our brightest. But when people talk about, we're a history, I mean, the left, we've got a history of mass migration. No, we haven't. Until Tony Blair, until 2000, net migration was at, wait for it, guys, 20 to 30,000 a year. Pretty much post-war, that was 20 to 30,000 a year. And we still had issues with integration from certain groups. Now, certain groups remarkably successful. Ugandan Indians, for instance, massive success rates. Jewish emigres, massively successful. There are other groups, you say, different groups have different rates of success in integrating in education, in income, and the like. We need to pay attention to that. Now, there's no doubt at all to me that a lot of people like you and me are going to be, and our audience, going to be just like, I just simply don't believe this. I don't trust them because we've been told so many lies before. And that was by people we thought actually did think it was an issue. Boris was lying the whole time. Boris would have given basically a citizenship to everyone who'd arrived here illegally. He really was absolutely had no issue at all on immigration. He was what's called a liberal, I would say, an idealist and an idiot on immigration issues. We know Keir Starmer doesn't believe any of this. We know Keir Starmer can change, literally just like that, depending on where the votes are. So what are the odds of them actually achieving any of this? Cutting overseas care workers and the like, because we know that, for instance, social care care workers and businesses are saying this is going to be a disaster for us. We've got a load of people from abroad who've worked in care who are in the country already, but a lot of them go, well, you know what, I can stack shelves at Sainsbury's and get an extra £1 an hour. So why would I be working in a care home, which is, really very hard work at times? And they're basically saying if we can't get overseas workers, we cannot get people locally to do the work. What are we going to do? Now, there is an issue there, but unless you're willing to tackle the welfare issue, unless you're willing to say to people, the 5 million people who are claiming to have anxiety on a Monday morning, haven't we all? You're feeling depressed on a Monday morning, oh, well, don't go to work then, claim benefits. Sorry about that, it's not going to fly anymore. Unless he's willing to do that, and he's made it clear he's not, we're not going to see those workers now. Care homes, even those who have private residence, their whole private residence used to sub the cost of the bonds from the council. It is central government funding that which is tax, which pays for those fees. I mean, they've been hit by minimum wage costs, they've been hit by national insurance costs, energy costs, you name it, everything else costs. We're going to see care homes closed down. That's going to be a crisis.
Right. Can I just deal with this a minute? Because let me start by saying this. I'm a Conservative, I've always been clear about that. The last Conservative government rejected exactly the same policies that Keir Starmer has now introduced as being too harsh and would shut down the sector. Shame on the Conservative Party for failing to do something that the Labour government has now done. But let's be really clear. The care home visa was introduced as a temporary emergency scheme in the aftermath of COVID.
After they sacked a load of care workers.
After they sacked
COVID jab.
And it was estimated to bring in 10,000 people. Instead, it has been running at hundreds of thousands of people a year, and the initial 6 months has been extended again and again and again. It has been extended on the back of lobbying by private businesses. Most care homes are not beautiful, lovely, independent businesses. They're owned by private equity firms, and they specialise in gouging as much money out of the taxpayer as they possibly can in order to provide a pretty darn average service.
The fees cost a fortune and the care workers are paid nothing. Someone's doing well.
To elderly people. And time and again, they will howl outrage that they cannot possibly employ people. In the last year that data was available, we brought in 150,000 people under this supposed emergency scheme, yet the number of vacancies in the sector decreased by only 20,000. Why? Because they just dropped the wages. And who pays for this? Well, let me tell you, the average Zimbabwean care worker coming into the United Kingdom on a health and care social visa brings how many dependents with them? 10.
I'm sorry, what?
10 dependents for the average Zimbabwean care worker that comes to this country. And how much does each low-skilled migrant cost this country? It costs the taxpayer, according to the OBR, over the course of their life, £500,000. So each time a care company says it needs, in order to avoid paying a Brit an extra £1,000 a year, each time it brings in a migrant, per migrant, not including the fact that they're bringing in dependents, the taxpayer is in effect handing that company a subsidy of half
because
a
we're
million
paying for the
quid.
schools and the hospitals and the roads.
Enough of big business turning around and saying that the British taxpayer should expect to be forced to subsidise their business model, to see their country denigrated, to see their communities changed in order that they continue to give money to shareholders. I'm a capitalist. I support business, but that isn't business. That is a massive con being perpetrated on the British public.
Absolutely, hear to all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and generally what Keir Starmer has said, promising that net migration will fall, his words, significantly. He's talked about taking back control. The cheek of the man. He's saying by 2029 we will see that net migration fall significantly. But I mean, it's currently at 728,000. New figures week on Thursday for the year to June 2025. But he failed to set a cap on numbers. So what is your reaction? I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from talk presenter and political commentator Peter Cardwell. He was at the press conference in Downing Street with Keir Starmer this morning, and he's going to be giving us his analysis up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
You know, he's got that Meghan thing, and never mind the truth, what about my truth? He still believes that the paparazzi and the press and the media killed his mother. Yeah. And the press and the media had nothing to do with it. I'll tell you who killed his mother. It was that completely drunk chauffeur, the hotel guy from the Ritz in Paris, who drank about 3 bottles of brandy, got behind the wheel of a Mercedes and drove the princess through that tunnel at 120 miles an hour.
UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. Delighted to be joined now by Talk presenter and, of course, political commentator Peter Carwood, live from Downing Street. A very good sunny morning to you, Peter.
It's a beautiful morning, Julia. Good morning to you.
Very disappointed you're not in your sort of, you know, our man in Sudan, cream linen suit. That's what I've gone for today. Man from Del Monte. Come on, you know, what a con.
Fine shop, Martin Bell.
Let's play a quick clip for those people who were lucky enough to be travelling this morning and didn't hear what Keir Starmer had to say this morning. But this is what he told a waiting nation.
Today we publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders and close the book.
I was watching Conclave at the weekend, but there we are. Peter Cardwell, in terms of what he had to say, it had all been briefed in advance, and we pretty much knew everything by the Sunday papers. Run through us just specifically what the actual details are of what he's announced.
So there are a number of things. Firstly, people will have to learn English and work in English as well. They're going to have to, there will be fewer dependents that are coming. Certainly people will earn their right to be here longer. They'll earn their right to remain if they do things like volunteering and taking part. Also, there are restrictions on people. They're trying to stop people coming across for care home schemes, etc. So there are lots of different ideas here. The key word is significant. What does significant mean in terms of getting those numbers down? Because the numbers are kind of falling anyway, because of, for legal migration anyway, because of Hong Kong. That was a thing for a while. Obviously Ukraine, those numbers have gone down slightly, but really getting it down to the tens of thousands, no target on that. That's what the Conservatives said for many years. He just says it will significantly come down. He was asked at the press conference, will this come down year on year, and he just said there'll be a significant reduction by the end of the Parliament.
I love his argument that he wouldn't announce a cap, wouldn't give a figure, and certainly something Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, doing the media round at the weekend, failed to do, and I've interviewed her numerous times over the years. She's always failed to give us a number. I've always said to the nearest tens of thousands, to the nearest hundreds of thousands, to the nearest million. Give me a number where you think would be too many, and they never actually say what would be too many. But given that we're looking at, I mean, the year to June 2024, 728,000 net. That meant 1.2 million foreign arrivals to the country. The year beforehand was even higher, 906,000. That was a particularly bad year. We know that it's going to come down anyway due to announcements on visa restrictions, which Rishi Sunak, when he was PM, brought in. So they'll see those numbers come down. And I think week on Thursday we get the figures for the whole of 2024, and we'll see what those figures are like. They're bound to come down, but we know that the Home Office, when they do their predictions on things, they're just making an assumption. The working assumption is that every year, till the end of this Parliament, we're seeing more than 500,000 net new arrivals.
Certainly, and my question is, how is that going to be administered properly? A couple of the other provisions are visas linked to training in the UK. How are you going to monitor that all these people are being trained? How are you going to monitor the skills have actually been raised to degree level, which is another provision of this? How are you going to monitor saying to people, oh, if you take part in community or voluntary activities in your community, that you will be further on in the list? Could there be an incentive for some community groups to perhaps falsify those? I wouldn't want to be as cynical as to say that, but I just have. So there's an awful lot to this. Also, the Home Office is struggling already in regard to getting a grip on this. They're certainly struggling when it comes to illegal migration. So if they're having extra checks, extra ways in which legal migration will be monitored in this country, is there money for this? Are there going to be more civil servants in the Home Office? Will Border Force be expanded? This is quite an ambitious plan. If it works, great. If the numbers come down significantly, well, I think that's a good thing. But of course, the questions coming as well on growth. If you want growth, the Prime Minister has frequently said that growth involves a workforce, a highly trained workforce. What about those 9 million people who don't get up and go to work every day for lots of different reasons? Of course, some of them totally legitimate, sometimes less. So there are loads of questions that are in this, and we still don't have a lot of answers in terms of how this will work practically. Also, how does he make sure that it is kept away from the people that he used to be, the human rights lawyers, who will say, oh well, actually these people got to stay in the country anyway, even if you want to deport them?
Well, that's it. I mean, the total abject failure to deal with the illegal illegal immigration. I mean, they have no idea how many people are in the country illegally who come over on the boats and the lorries or overstayed their visas. It's thought to be in the 1.5 million mark. But given that we didn't even know the number of people from the EU living in the country, and they were all here legally, had to show passports and things. I mean, when they actually went,
that's another great point.
Yeah, no, they literally when they went to people like, okay, if you're here from the EU, can you sign up and so you can stay here? And when people did that, there were 2 million more people here than the officials knew about. It is absolutely terrifying that they have no idea whether people have arrived legally or illegally in this country, who is here and who isn't.
And that's another very key point, Julia, actually, when it comes up to saying, well, we've done this trade deal with India, we've done this trade deal with America, there may well be one with the EU to be announced later this month. Well, is there going to be a youth mobility scheme there? Is that not going to raise immigration as well, even for a few years, for those people who are here for a short time? There are loads of questions around this, and there weren't many answers this morning. There was a lot of rhetoric, there was a lot of saying it's all going to be fine, but also when he's saying we're bringing in these key measures that are going to help and are going to bring it down significantly, but if they don't work, we're going to go further. Well, does your plan work or does it not work? Do you know? So there are so many questions with this. There are just so many questions.
Well, indeed. And in terms of what he said, in terms of this isn't something he's doing as a result of the threat from the local elections. It's something that he believes in. Sam Armstrong made the wonderful point. This is basically Nigel is coming, look busy. The reality is this wouldn't be happening if there wasn't a threat to the red wall seats from Reform.
You're absolutely right, and what you can't see behind me here in Downing Street is the huge, big elephant in the room that is Nigel Farage. It is Reform UK. It is their huge victory over the last couple of weeks. Nobody mentioned Reform UK. Keir Starmer didn't mention it. None of the journalists who were selected for questions mentioned Reform UK. The key point is, Downing Street will say, oh, we've been working on this for a year. This was always the plan. Yeah. It's now being announced about 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks, after Reform UK have just kicked your backsides in the local elections. So I think we can legitimately say that this has been brought forward because of what Reform UK are doing. But whether people will be convinced, whether people will say, well, actually the numbers are coming down, they can notice something in their communities, a difference in their communities in 4 years' time by the time of the elections. Well, we'll see, and maybe it'll all be magically fine. But my sense is it won't.
Peter Cardwell, great to talk to you, presenter, political commentator as well, live there from down a very sunny, lovely Downing Street. Sam Armstrong, it's an interesting point that Peter made at the very end there about whether people notice a difference. The reality is there aren't going to be English language tests for people who are already here. We've already got a huge number of people who've been given permanent right to leave to remain in the country, some given citizenship, and certainly the people with permanent rights to remain in the country, many of them not speaking English, their other halves not speaking English. Yes, their children may well go on to do very well. But statistically, actually, that doesn't appear to be the case. We've already got a problem that is here. There's nothing in this announcement from the Prime Minister today that seems to me will tackle the problem of the people who are already here, who are not net contributors. And that, I'm afraid, is the vast majority of migrants to this country.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, once a migrant is in the country, we know from experience that time and time again, they then seek to bring in each and every one of their family members, to the extent that you get their stepbrothers, uncles, doctors, dog walker coming over into the country. And is it any wonder then that in pockets of our country, we have parallel societies? And that used to be derided as a conspiracy theory. They now sit in the heart of our democracy. We have 5 MPs in Parliament, 4 of whom were elected basically on an Islamist platform in which they seem to be far more preoccupied about trying to criminalise in this country criticism of Islam, to spend their whole time harping on about what's going on in the Middle East, than they are about any of the concerns about what those communities would have cared about historically for hundreds of years. Jobs, industrial places, these are traditional towns and cities that mattered enormously. They have been taken over completely. None of that's going to change. All Keir Starmer is doing basically is saying, oh, well, we're going to slightly slow down the rate that continues to happen in this country.
I don't think that's going to fly with voters, but there we are. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get some of your messages coming up very soon. Up next, going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking to, well, what are the people of the hour? Reform UK's Deputy Leader, Richard Tice, live in the studio. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:33 is the time. So I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong is still with me here at Talk, the home of common sense. Now we're joined by Richard Tice, MP, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, who've hot-footed it here. Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Another busy morning.
I'm sure you've been very excited and very happy to hear Keir Starmer saying very, very clearly that net migration will fall significantly by the end of this Parliament, by 2029. There was no cap on numbers, but a lot about language skills, graduate level skills for visas, cutting care home visas by 50,000, expecting people to wait not just 5 years but 10 years before they can apply for indefinite leave to remain and then have a chance for citizenship. Surely you welcome all of that?
Well, anyone think that he's been listening and learning and copying Reform's language and what we've been saying for many years? So in a sense,
were you bigots then, though?
Well, yes, probably. But when he talks about integration, we've been saying that for years. When he talks about learning the language and working, I mean, these are all sensible things. The issue is that there's no target, there's no number at all. We're very clear on the number. The number should be net zero. And just last week we had, I think, the Office for National Statistics saying that the average annual net immigration was going to be over 500,000. And he hasn't resiled from that in any way. And I think the lack of willingness to put a number on it means he can't be measured, he can't be held to account. And then I think he went on to say would sort of bring the numbers down by the end of the decade. That's not good enough.
We also know that the numbers are going to come down anyway after the Boris wave, and we saw 2023 906,000 net migration, well over 1 million people from abroad arriving. It's people in over people leaving. 728,000 last year. We're going to get new figures in a week or so's time. They're likely to come down anyway.
A bit.
Yes.
But let's be very clear. And when those numbers come out next Thursday, the 22nd, look for the revisions, Julia, how they revise the numbers upward for previous years. I'm quite sure they'll be nickel and diming and possibly fiddling the figures. And let's see, I suspect they might creep down a bit, but nothing like as much as the British people want.
I think a lot of people, obviously, the biggest concern is illegal migration, what's coming in, people coming across on the boats. Still, by the way, on the lorries as well. That people can't ignore.
Hundreds more this morning, by the way.
Yeah, well, what a surprise. Nice weather.
Surprise.
We'll look out. Oh, look, it's a lovely, beautiful day. Great, we're going to get some more men from faraway countries of fighting age coming to live here on our dime. I think we all cheer at that on a Monday morning, do we not? But I think people can sort of they go, OK, we need you to get on top of illegal migration. I think what is absolutely mind-blowing for most of us, and I've been writing about and talking about this stuff for about 30 years, and I find it mind-blowing still, is that no government of any political hue seems to have any idea, even though they hand out the sodding visas themselves, over how many people have come to this country each year. I mean, they should know every day. Well, we know exactly how many people have come because we've given them a visa, they've told us how many people they're bringing in, and they've come in and someone's done their passport. How is it the authorities don't know who's come to the country, don't know who's left the country, don't know how many people have stayed in the country?
It's actually quite simple. You have to have people organising and running the system who believe in the cause of secure sovereign borders. And there are so many different ways to game the system. For example, student visas. It turns out, through whistleblowers that I've got, that you've got tens of thousands of online courses being done for people who don't have to rock up to the university, don't have to speak English, use Google Translate to do their degree, get their degree, they've then got a 2-year visa, they can stay here. There's all this stuff going on. And just look at the Prime Minister's track record. He said he would stop the boats by smashing the gangs. Well, that's going well, isn't it? It's 30% up this year. He's encouraged the gangs. So I think people will need to judge the Prime Minister and this government by their track record, and it's not good.
Are there encouraging signs here, though, where when Reform was the only party in previous incarnations saying we need to tackle this issue, and everyone else from the political, well, they saw themselves the centre ground, but they're not, because I think a lot of their views are actually entirely extremist. But when they were shouting bigot, xenophobe, racist at New and Nigel Farage and others for saying stuff which is, by the way, mainstream opinion among most voters, and we know that certainly from the local elections as well, don't we? That the fact that even Labour now are accepting that mass migration is not an economic benefit to the country, that people's failure to integrate and the lack of language skills is a cultural issue that needs to be tackled. I mean, the fact that we've now got, you guys, Tories and Labour recognising that, is that not a good thing?
Look, it's progress. but focus on whether or not they're actually going to deliver, and that's our real concern. But yes, the fact they're talking about it, they're using the language that we've used for years, which apparently made us racists and bigots, I think is a good thing, because actually what we heard on the doors in the run-up to the local elections wasn't about potholes, it was about immigration. And that's why we got elected in such huge numbers. People want some action on this, because we actually can't wait until the end of the decade to get on top of this issue, because we've got a housing crisis, we've got a demand crisis in healthcare. Wherever you look, we've got public services that are completely and utterly broken. And we've got millions of people out of work, on tax-free benefits, for them, too many people, it doesn't pay to go to work.
In terms of the care workers' visas, we know, and it's something Sam Armstrong's pointed out a bit earlier, huge numbers of those handed out, supposed to be on a temporary basis, but actually didn't somehow tackle the shortage of care workers in the care homes. One would argue that you create a care home shortage, care worker shortage, by simply sacking a lot of people because they don't get a jab that they don't need for COVID. What would your solution be? Because if you're saying you want net zero migration, if you've got British people who will not do that job, who can earn £1.50 an hour more working, stacking the shelves in a supermarket than wiping someone's bottom in a care home, with all due respect, they're going to do that. What are you going to do to make sure there are enough care workers?
Well, the reality is, it worked before we had mass immigration. So actually, maybe that's how markets
We have much more elderly people now. We have far more elderly people.
Fine, but we've got
and families are more disintegrated.
But bluntly, lots of people claiming benefits. Actually, maybe if you want benefits, you want that right. Maybe you've got the responsibility to get trained and to go and get a job. You could have targeted numbers. I just don't accept this principle. We've had over 100,000 care workers in the last 3 years alone come in from overseas, and yet there's still a shortage.
Yeah.
Maybe the care system needs to be more integrated with the healthcare system. And when I was in a care home just a few weeks ago in Boston, actually, they weren't telling me it was all about the recruitment crisis. They were telling me it was the daft processes and procedures that was impacting and delaying care for their elderly residents. That was much more their concern. So I think sometimes we're being slightly misinformed, slightly misled, because it suits lots of people to bring in cheap, low-skilled labour from overseas that suppresses wages for British people and leaves British people deciding it's more sensible to work 16 hours a week and stay on benefits, and that is unacceptable.
That is one of the key issues. And we're often told about the working poor, and I always point out, but if you do 2 days a week, odds are on minimum wage, odds are you're not going to be able to pay your bills, and we're going to have to pick up the bill. Isn't the reality, though, as much as you're critical of Keir Starmer, and I share your criticisms, and I know many Conservatives as well will point which is like Keir Starmer's changed on a dime. All the things that he said, a few weeks ago, a few months ago, certainly in the last few years, completely absolute change in terms of his views on immigration. Whether or not we believe he actually does believe it, I don't think anyone does. Whether we believe he'll actually deliver it, I think we're pessimistic. No one seems to have delivered it, even the people we thought cared about it, and we don't think he does. However, if Labour did manage to massively reduce immigration, and they did manage to get on top of this, and they did manage to get more Brits into those jobs and deal with this issue, that would be a disaster for Reform UK, wouldn't it? That's your shtick. I mean, you've got lots of other policies. I mean, net zero on energy and things like that. But at the end of the day, your big, USP has been we will tackle mass uncontrolled immigration and we'll get rid of illegal migrants. If Keir Starmer can get on top of even one of those, that's bad for you in the polls.
But it's great for the country, Julia, and that's the most important thing, because that's what the people want. And we're not afraid of competition. We're not afraid of holding people to account and being held to account ourselves when we run councils and things. So look, if they get on top of it, great, we've had an influence. We've changed the course of the way this country is managed. That's basically what we're in politics to do.
So you, in a way, you're quite happy to sort of be surplus to requirements, not for Nigel Farage to be the next Prime Minister, as the latest polls have suggested, for you to perhaps be Deputy Prime Minister. I can see you in an Angela Rayner style suit.
I'm a bloke, slight difference.
Well, she wears those suits. But you would forego that in return for which the country had been sorted out by Labour.
Look, at the end of the day, the role of politicians, the role of any government is to make people better off, to make public services and the quality of life better off. And those governments that do that get re-elected. That's the bottom line.
OK, Richard Tice, thank you very much. Just a quick word from Sam Armstrong, still with us in the studio. Same for your party as well. You know, part of this is going to be the failure of Labour Party to get any of this stuff done. If they did achieve it, which would be, as Richard Tice points out, very good for the country, it would be a disaster for Tory chances at the next election.
Well, look, I think there's plenty for both Tories and Reform to be worried about. Labour solving the migration crisis ain't one of them.
I think there's some agreement in the studio on this one. Sam Armstrong staying with us. Richard Tice, thank you very much for joining us. 10:43 is the time. This is Talk.
I think it's really important to be clear about this. So much of what is in that green paper is absolutely right. We have to reduce the benefit bill in this country. We have to get people back into work. Work is absolutely the right place for people to be. And I think we've gone through a generation where the benefit bill has skyrocketed. But cutting support for disabled people doesn't solve that problem.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong also still with us, joined right now by Major General Chip Chapman. He's a senior British military advisor to the US Central Command. Very, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, I just want to give us some breaking news, and this is regarding the final, we believe, alive American-Israeli hostage fighting in the IDF when he was taken captive on October the 7th, 2023. This is Eden Alexander. He holds American citizenship. It was announced yesterday that he would be released early this week, and it's now been confirmed by Hamas he will be released today. This is sort of part of some sort of overture negotiated by the Qataris for ahead of Donald Trump's trip to the Middle East. How significant is this release if it does, fingers crossed, go ahead?
Well, it's always good that hostages are released, and that's one of the four objectives of the difficult. We still don't know what the shape of the day after would be after any conflict concludes. We know that Hamas still want to be a part of this, but without the responsibility of government. That is the $60,000 question, and the really difficult one for the future.
Yeah, indeed. And again, it's interesting, isn't it, that Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff, his advisor, and indeed Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, working on what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Ukraine, dealing with Iran. There's an awful lot going on at the moment. Let's talk about Ukraine right now, though. We had this meeting of European leaders, new German Chancellor and others at the weekend, and a call for a 30-day ceasefire starting today from Vladimir Putin before there could be any talks. This has always been basically the proviso ahead of any talks, any peace talks. There has to be a ceasefire in place. Donald Trump sort of like, you want to have talks, but no requirement on there being a ceasefire first. Basically, Zelensky kind of called Putin's bluff and basically said, right, I'll be in Istanbul on Thursday for talks, ceasefire or not. I am there for the talks. I will wait for you, Vladimir Putin. Do you think there's a chance at all that Vladimir Putin will turn up?
No, I don't. The problem we have at the moment is both of these sides see the problem from a complete different part of the spectrum. So Ukraine sees it as a ceasefire first, and then you go towards the negotiating sort of table. The Russians see it in terms of looking at what they want to achieve in their end state. That is why they keep on talking about root causes and territorial realities of the bits of terrain they've taken. And so you haven't really got gap analysis. You've got chasm analysis between the two sides. What Zelensky's thing actually does, though, is the pressure strategy earlier in the year seemed to be all on Ukraine. Yeah. If if Putin doesn't play ball with this at all, then the pressure strategy will reverse and certainly be on Putin in terms of the three things which Trump has sort of said earlier in the year. And the first one is obviously increased sanctions, including secondary sanctions. The second one is potentially more weapons supplies to them. And the third one is the real crippler in the economy of Russia would be if the oil price continues to fall. He was talking with the Saudis about $45 a barrel. That would cripple the Russian economy. And it may be that is one of the sidebars with the Saudis in the
And America is a massive oil and gas producer as well, so they can themselves. It used to be, the OPEC countries, largely the Middle East countries, could decide where the oil price was, and I believe they did refuse early on in the war, didn't they, to help out with basically, can you produce a bit more so we can cut that oil price, or was that post lockdown? But America can produce enough that they can push that oil price down themselves if they so choose.
Well, like all these things, there are many variables about how the world economy works, and Saudi Arabians also need the oil price at a certain level because of their Vision 2030. They need significant monetary flows to enable their future vision. So it's
their vision to pretend that they're a normal country and invite tourists over.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's call it what it is. In terms of the chances of there being any end to what Donald Trump keeps calling the meat grinder, although for some reason he seems to think millions of people have died when they have not. I find it extraordinary he can't get that right. He's confusing casualties, i.e. injuries, many of them very brutal, with deaths a lot of the time. Do you think that there is, we know, of course, Zelensky wants peace, but on reasonable terms that guarantee the safety of his country and his people. But do you think that Putin does actually want peace? Because there is an argument, isn't there, where the country is worn out, they're on a military footing, and actually, how long can they keep going? But there's also an element where, unless he has something he can sort of call a victory, if he moves off that war footing, what does he do with all those men who are returning home, many of them injured? And we know after those parades to celebrate Russia's VE Day, the 9th of May, with Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, turning up, standing by his side, and other world leaders as well. He has got the world's second largest economy and massive military force backing him. Does he even need to come to the table?
Well, the first thing is that all wars are fought for political objectives. The political objective that Russia would like, in a maximalist sense, is to absolutely make sure that the sovereignty of Ukraine is absolutely thrown away for the future. That was their maximalist objective. He still needs to have minimalist objectives to ensure that he remains in power. That is why Witkoff, for example, was talking about the sort of 4+1, which is Crimea plus the 4 oblasts, the equivalent to states or counties.
Except he thought that Crimea was in the east of the country. He didn't even know his basic geography, rather worryingly.
Yeah, I think what Donald Trump believes, though, is he believes in a humanitarian peace because he doesn't think in terms of winning or losing. He thinks in terms of stopping the killing. Now, that is admirable from a moral perspective. It rewards the aggressor is the problem with that. And this, again, this chasm analysis between the necessity for Ukraine to protect its sovereignty and therefore to have some sort of security guarantee in the future, and Russia to believe also that it needs some sort of security guarantee because they look at this through the prism of the West being an existential threat to them. That may be nonsense, but that's the way that Putin looks at it.
Fascinating. Thank you very much, Dee. Can I also ask you about a panorama programme on tonight on the BBC, which features eyewitness testimony from more than 30 people who served either with or alongside UK Special Forces, SAS, as well as the SBS, the Special Boat Service as well, where they have basically broken years of silence to give accounts, they claim, of alleged war crimes committed by colleagues in Iraq and Afghanistan. We know there's an ongoing inquiry into this. We know there have been numerous allegations made in court cases involving former servicemen in Afghanistan and Iraq. But this is the first time we've actually got, people who themselves were UK Special Forces talking about people being, shot dead when they were handcuffed, civilians in their beds and the like. What do you make of these allegations and the severity of them?
Well, the allegations are very severe, but that is why on the 14th of December 22, the Hatton Cave inquiry into this alleged unlawful activity came about. None of that, therefore, is proven at the moment. What you can say is that our UK special forces have the potential for moral injury. For that, you could say they possibly do have, because the Australian SAS had the Brereton report in 2020, which found that they were involved in 39 murders in 29 separate incidents. So, you know, the one thing about every military is you're only as strong as your weakest links, and that you don't want to have moral injury. That protects you from being, you know, just savage animals, and that's not what you want to do. But we'll have to wait until the inquiry Haddon Cave comes out to see what is the truth of this. So they're just allegations at the moment. I'd rather they weren't there, but it seems that what they're talking about is not heat of the moment stuff in battle. That's very sad, and you can never take a bullet back. This might be premeditated murder.
And that's the concern.
No officer in the British Army could accept that.
And the difference between, you know, the good guys and the bad guys in terms of the countries in the world is that we do actually investigate these things, and people do go to prison if they're found guilty of these things. And again, it's our own servicemen and women who will be the most horrified if any of these allegations are proven to be true. And as you say, it's very important to point out these allegations at the current time are not proven. Major General Chip Chapman, I forgot the former earlier on, former senior military advisor to the US Central Command. Thank you indeed for joining us. Sam Armstrong, can I come back to Ukraine with you on this? He's quite clever, I think, of Zelensky. He obviously, you know, he got rather undone by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who's in the White House. He's obviously been given some good advice, I think, by European leaders who kind of dealt with Donald Trump and know how to handle him, and just, give him lots of praise, play along. But also, basically, this idea that call Putin's bluff. Make it really clear, really public, that Putin is basically stringing Donald Trump along. Do you think Putin is going to turn up in Istanbul on Thursday?
Absolutely, categorically not, because for Putin this has never been about peace. I mean, all this is doing is illustrating a reality that we all knew, which is Ukraine wants peace, although sovereignty, and we'll come back to why that is, whereas Russia wants to capture all of Ukraine, and it wishes to abolish that country and to run a modern-day empire. And you know, we talk about ending the meat grinder and we talk about ending the war, but let's just be clear about why Ukraine can't fall. It's not just about punishing, not allowing such barbarity to prosper. It's also, what does Russia do when it takes over Ukraine? It literally steals and sells the children of Ukraine back to wealthy Russian families. It sells children. It is engaged in child slavery, or in essence, child slave trade. Ukraine cannot be asked or cannot be expected to negotiate. Ukraine has been very clear. It's prepared to make huge compromises, give up on Crimea, give up on the entire eastern part of the country. But it is trying to make peace. And look, the thing about Zelensky now is I think he's beginning to understand that with Donald Trump, you have to do some of the theatre of politics. You have to make the big gestures. And there's no bigger gesture than going and sitting and trying to negotiate with an empty room.
And him sitting in that room on his own will be absolutely... And again, the important thing is, I think, at this point, is that we have to see Donald Trump being humiliated by Vladimir Putin before Donald Trump realises, oh, I'm now looking weak. I think that Donald Trump's attitude on this is a humiliation to Donald Trump, his White House, and to the Republicans, and most of all to the American people, because he's not exuding strength, he's exuding weakness. And frankly, this looks like a fall guy for Vladimir Putin right now. I want to get to some messages. I want to get some calls, but I think, Andrew, we're going to have to... No, let's squeeze in Andrew right now. Andrew's on the line in Hertfordshire, 0344 499 1000. We had lots of top guests, and I wanted to squeeze in a call regarding Keir Starmer promising net migration will fall significantly by 2029, but no cap on numbers actually set. Andrew, obviously you believe every single word Keir Starmer said, right? I thought that might make you laugh.
Yeah, so it's clever, isn't it? So, you know, in the news media, the first hour is the most important. Monday morning, back from bank holiday, let's get out there, let's get the message across on migration. This is irrelevant. He wasted your time and my time, and Richard Tice this morning is talking about care homes, very interesting, but that's not what this is about. The British public reform are driving illegal migrants across from the continent to the UK. Free money, free health, free accommodation. That is the immigration that the country should focus on. And don't waste your time talking about the other things that he talked about. That's
I disagree with you. I'm concerned about both. In terms of the sheer numbers, the legal migration and the overstaying is actually a bigger issue, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, you can discuss migration, but it's not the migration of the day to worry about. he's got control of the narrative, and now we're not thinking about boats that are turning up this morning or people whose environments are being changed desperately.
I think we can manage both. I really do. I think the British people are capable of holding these two ideas in their heads at the same time.
Well, yeah, you can multitask because of your gender. He can't.
Well, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what gender Keir Starmer is this week? My favourite thing about that call, Andrew, is the fact that you thought it was a bank holiday. I think that will be all the sunshine and the drinking rosé in the garden that a lot of people have done this weekend. No names mentioned. Anyway, Andrew, thank you for that. Whether or not you agree with Andrew or not, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is this Keir Starmer kind of just like pull the wool over our eyes? And is it the illegal migration you're worried about? I think we could be worried about more than one thing at the same time. I think we're capable of that, aren't we? But I'd love to hear your thoughts. There's promise that net migration will fall significantly by 2029. What does significantly mean? I mean, what does it actually mean if we've still got, as the Home Office predicts, some 500,000 more people arriving in this country than leave every single year? And by the way, they don't go home, they stay here. Where on earth are they all going to live? Where are their kids going to go to school? Where are they going to park their cars? And where are they going to get GP surgery appointments? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to you on this beautiful, beautiful, warm summer. Are we in summer yet? I know it's only mid-May, but it feels like a summer's day. I mean, Andrew just called up, thinks it was a bank holiday weekend. I'm surprised he's even at work today. It's Monday. But it is Monday. It's a working day, or those of you who are working from home. Wink, wink, in the garden. Great to have you on board. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Whether you're one of the plans, there'll be 50,000 fewer visas for low-skilled workers, including care workers, while skilled visas will require graduate degrees. Migrants will also have to wait up to 10 years instead of the current 5 before they can apply for citizenship, while judges' powers to block deportations using human rights laws will be curbed. But will any of that actually result in any big change? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is your reaction with Keir Starmer promising very specifically, he says he will take back control. I mean, you've got to laugh at the chutzpah of that, haven't you? And say that numbers will fall significantly by 2029, but he will not say what that number would be and won't set a cap. The Tories today are going to push an amendment in Parliament to actually have a cap that is set by the MPs every single year on the number of people coming to the country. I want to know your reaction to that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. I promise to get to more of your messages in this hour. But also you can send a message to us on YouTube, and that is free as well. We're also going to be talking about the extraordinary spate of thought crime arrests. Police have been told to spend their time catching actual criminals. I know, what a mind-blowing idea. After retired Special Constable Julian Fawkes was handcuffed in his own home over a tweet he posted a few years ago, and his house was searched by police who commented on his Douglas Murray books and other what they called very Brexity things. Good Lord, I hope the police never come into my home. They'll be very unhappy with that Union Jack dress I wore on Brexit night. Also, Britain's most dangerous prisoners should be kept in US-style supermax conditions with no contact with other inmates and certainly no cooking facilities like kettles. This is according to the head of the Prison Officers Union. The demand came after Southport killer Axel Cabana is alleged to have thrown boiling water at a prison guard at HMP Belmarsh, and comes after boiling oil was thrown by Abidi, one of the brother of Salman Abidi, the Manchester Arena bomber, at prison guards in another prison. We'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides. Delighted to say joining me throughout the show is commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, we've got to start with immigration again, haven't we? Because it is the big topic. Interesting to have had Richard Tice in the studio talk about this. And one of the points I made to him was, you'd be absolutely gutted if Labour actually achieved, cutting immigration significantly enough that the British public would be happy with it, because that's kind of, that's the reform shtick. It's kind of also the shtick of, the Tories as well, that they would tackle immigration, although no one believes them, because of course they were in charge for 14 years when it absolutely ballooned, even more than it did under Tony Blair. But given that we've got, a week or so till we get the next figures for the whole of 2024 net migration, going back, June 2023, the year to June 2023, 906 net migration, as in it's more people coming to the country than leaving. So well over 1 million. I think it was 1.5 million came that year. In the year to June 2024, so basically a year ago, 728,000 more people came than left. It was 1.2 million people who arrived who were not from this country, most of them non-EU as well. Is there going to be anything that the British public is going to accept in terms of taking back control and a significant fall in net migration that doesn't involve those numbers coming way, way, way down, certainly below the Home Office prediction of some 525,000 net a year?
Let's be very clear. Even if we achieved what Reform say that they wish to do, which is net zero migration, we will still feel the cultural, economic, political consequences of migration that has happened to this country already, permeating through for years. Talking about reducing migration, and let's be clear, this is what Starmer is doing, talking about reducing the net rate from 700,000 a year to 500,000 a year won't make a cotton-picking difference to the standards of living in this country, to the rate of cultural change, to the strain on our public services, to the waiting lists that people face to get a house, to get NHS treatment or anything of the sort. It's not going to deal with extraordinary stories like we heard over the weekend that the First Lady of Sierra Leone manages to have a council house down the road from here in Southwark. These outrages are going to carry on. The British public have been sold a pup for 25 years. We didn't have mass migration in this country, despite people who claim we did, until 1997.
We were talking about it earlier. It was, on average, 20 to 30,000 max a year net migration to this country. Tiny numbers, absolutely tiny numbers. And then it ballooned under Tony Blair.
There's that old Westminster sketch, isn't there, about how the British state deals with a crisis. It says, deny that there is a crisis, deny we've got mass migration, then say, OK, maybe there is mass migration, but we shouldn't do anything about it.
It's a good thing.
But then they say, oh, maybe we should do something about it, but there's nothing we can do. And then you say, oh, maybe there was something we could do, but it's far too late now. This is Sir Humphrey, this is the British state, this is Liberal politicians all coming together. They've sold a pup to the British public, and whatever happens now, the damage to our country has already been done.
This is the key.
So you say to me, Julia, you say to me, oh, well, wouldn't it be bad if Labour did something? Well, firstly, they wouldn't, because...
No, I said no. What I said was to both you and Richard Tice, you're a Conservative, he's Reform, that actually, that would actually be harmful to you politically if Labour achieved something, although we'd all welcome it for the nation.
It's not just welcome. I mean, this is one of the greatest ills, the greatest threats to our country, to our culture, to our values, to our way of life that we face. We have been undergoing for years now an invasion with the full knowledge of our political class that has permanently made things worse. It is not a better place to live in this country for 25 years of mass migration. It isn't. It's worse.
Even by the way, for the migrants who'd already come here.
Who are the people that want this dealing with the most?
Yeah.
Go ask people who came to this country legally 3-4 generations ago what they think on this issue. They'll all tell you it's an outrage. It's happening in their communities first. They're seeing it.
Yeah.
Solving this is the most important issue we face as a country. If this got solved, I would happily pack up my bags tomorrow, say, right, do you know what? Politics is done for me, because things would begin to get better. But it's just not going to happen.
It is about, there's an economic issue, there is it affects everything. It affects our productivity, it affects wages, it affects housing, it affects healthcare, it affects our schools, it affects every single area of our life, but particularly culturally, and you mentioned earlier when people, walking down their local high street. I was driving down a major high street near me over the weekend, and I mean, genuinely every other shop front is in a foreign language. Yeah. Now, and it's and again we were talking about it's wonderful. There's a lovely French deli, or there's this. No, that's not what's happening. It's absolutely a load of nonsense. And this is the thing: when Nigel Farage talks for Reform UK about getting down to net zero immigration, so there are people who leave. We'd still have people coming in the country, being able to get the great and the good and the best from the brightest from other countries. No one's got a problem with that. People who can contribute, people who speak the language, people who share similar culture. And people say, oh, you're happy to have people from Australia and America. Yeah, I am. What, do I want people from Australia and America or Canada or France even, originally, as opposed to people from Pakistan and Bangladesh? Yes, and it's got bugger all to do with anyone's colour of their skin. I think it is absolutely down to, are you already acclimatised and assimilated to values and norms and cultural expectations about, say, how women should be treated, how gay people should be treated, just your view, views on religion and integration. Of course, and anyone who pretends these things aren't different in different countries, frankly, is lying. They're lying to themselves and others. But this is the thing, I don't think anyone believes that Keir Starmer is going to do this. I don't think anyone believes that Keir Starmer believes it and believes it should be done. And the fundamental issue we've had is not just Labour, but the Tories for many years, claiming they're talking a good game with us, taking back control. Now, Brexit wasn't just about immigration, but it was about the ability of us to control what happens, so we can hold our politicians to account. National sovereignty, democratic accountability. And when Boris Johnson unleashed the Boris wave, like after lockdown, let's just literally invite in the whole world, there was an impact from that. Is there any point, though, in tackling the immigration, as you were saying, in terms of the damage already done, cutting those levels now to get it down to something manageable and something that we can vaguely begin to absorb, unless you're actually going to tackle the issue of people who are already here? OK, some may be British citizens, that may be difficult, but people who are not British citizens but may have been given indefinite leave to remain, others, but who have not integrated, often we see, particularly from certain countries in the subcontinent, where the women, they don't speak the language, they're not integrated at all, people living in parallel societies. Are we going to say at any point, we don't think that you should stay here and we think you should leave? Because I don't understand why people think that Rupert Lowe is saying anything outrageous when he says that, when he talks about illegal migrants, we're bearing in mind we've got 1.5 million of them, people who came here legally, have overstayed their visas, that we should be deported, they should be deported. I think we say to everyone, literally, you have a month to get out. Because you're not here, if you are not here legally, then otherwise things are going to get very difficult for you. Now, there'll be a massive backlash from the liberal media on that. But if I was in a country illegally, I would expect to be gone. But the vast majority of people living in this country who are here illegally have come here on legal visas, and that's the issue. We've got loads of people who've overstayed visas, or people who are on visas who are allowed legally to remain here, but are not contributing.
Julia, do you know what? Stuff them for a minute. Stuff them. I even perhaps, if I have to do a deal on this, it feels a bit like being Zelensky, dealing with the completely unreasonable people. I'm even happy to keep them. Can we just deport the child rapists, please?
Is that too much to ask?
Can we just kick out the people that organise the mass rape of girls in British towns and cities for no reason other than that they were white working class girls? Can we just deal with drug dealers, and whether or not their child happens to prefer British chicken nuggets to the ones they have in Albania? Can we just kick out pedophiles? Can we kick out the 50 convicted terrorists that have remained in our country despite the fact that they're eligible for deportation? Can we just deal with those people first? Is it too much to ask as a society that we're expected to welcome in, yes, millions of people every year, but we just want to send back somewhere those of them that decide to organise the institutional, industrial, mass rape of white working class girls? Is that too much for the public to ask of our political class? Because according to judges, according to politicians, according to civil servants, and far too many in the media, supposedly it is. It's disgrace. Let's stop talking about care workers and all of the rest of it.
Deal with the real issue.
We are in a country that can't kick out child rapists.
And again, and we're always told it's consumer rights legislation, which affects every other country as well, and yet they're able to do it and we're not. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that, and I'm sure our audience are cheering away from you on that as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get some of your messages and your calls coming up very soon. I want to talk also, let's go on to another topic. And you mentioned, again, this is the interesting thing, linked to this, because extremists in our jails demand from Prison Officers Association for supermax security measures for the worst inmates after we had the horrific attack when we had one, boiling oil poured thrown at prison officers, 2 severely hospitalised. Then we saw at the weekend the allegation that Axel Rudakabana, the Southport killer, allegedly, I have to say that, threw boiling water from a kettle in his cell at a prison guard who has been hospitalised and will hopefully be able to return to work next week. Calls to separate radical Muslim prisoners to stop violence in prison jails. Anyway, I thought that's what they were supposed to be doing or had already done anyway. But I think most people find it extraordinary that people who've been convicted of the most heinous crimes, and remember, Axel Rudakabana smiled when he found out how many little girls he'd killed. He smiled when the police told them that. This is a dangerous man, as was Abedi, the brother of Salman Abedi, who carried out the Manchester Arena bombing, again, killing little girls. Bit of a theme there, isn't there? These same tactics, throwing hot water, hot oil on prison guards, there is now a fear from prison officers it's a matter of time before a prison guard is killed. Why on earth is a dangerous prisoner, an extremist radical, especially after the boiling oil incident? Why the boiling oil incident? Anyone was allowed in the kitchen, allowed to fashion a knife and things. Why on earth have they got access to a sodding kettle in their cell anyway?
There is no story at the moment that is enraging me as much as this one. Axel Rudakabana is not just a dangerous man. That creature is the personification of evil. He butchered girls for fun. Girls that wanted to go to do nothing more than dance to happy music. Hashim Abedi deliberately organised the mass execution of dozens of people. These people are as evil as they get. They are so evil that they have caused me to reconsider the opposition I used to have to the death penalty. As far as I'm concerned, the appropriate penalty for them would have been to be detained at a place of lawful imprisonment, to be taken to a place of execution, and to be hanged by their neck until they are dead. I accept the fact that I haven't made the argument well enough on that. I accept the fact that this country has abolished that a long time ago, and I accept the fact that we've agreed as a society that the worst we can do is lock away people for life, albeit in both of these cases they're not locked away for life. They are coming out
that's the bit,
because of so-called human rights
The deal
laws.
on getting rid of hanging was that the worst criminals went to prison for life.
And when they go to prison, they are not to be sent to a Butlins camp. They are not to be sent to a student halls of residence. They are to be taken to a place to be locked in a concrete box, to be delivered sufficient food to keep them alive and little more, and they are to be left to rot as far away from anybody
we don't need to
that they could hurt
them.
again.
They're not supposed to be coming out. But I completely agree with you. I just find it absolutely extraordinary. But especially even after the boiling oil incident, they're not going, oh, maybe it's a good idea. But also, we know the Islamist extremism is a huge issue in behind bars. We know that huge numbers of prisoners from every walk of life are basically being forced to pretend or to convert, but a lot of them to pretend to convert, just to maintain safety in prison, and forced to have halal food and things. This cannot be allowed to continue. I mean, I find it extraordinary. I hold no I hold no happiness and joy for Tommy Robinson. He's behind bars, banged to rights for what he did. He's not a political prisoner, but Tommy Robinson doesn't have the same facilities as Axel Rudakabana and Hashim Abedi had. I find that mind-blowing in terms of the privileges they have. I don't know why you get the privilege of a kettle. I don't want you to... No TV, no kettle, no working in the kitchen, none of that. You ain't earn it. I just find it extraordinary. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call on that one, 0344 499 1000. Again, we're going to find anyone who goes, oh yeah, it's fine, it's a great idea. But again, they should be in supermax security, American style, shouldn't they? Just finally, I want to talk, because I know you're involved at the Free Speech Union, about police arresting people for thought crimes. We've had a huge number of these. There's a wonderful video over the weekend of a man being questioned for having a placard saying, like, no, there is no such thing as a trans child. Completely true. And police questioning him and saying, well, if someone finds what you said offensive, we'll have to talk to you. He goes, no, there's no law against not being offended. That doesn't exist. The guy was brilliant, and he read out the law. But then we had the extraordinary case, the Free Speech Union been working on this, the police having to apologise after arresting a former special constable, extraordinarily, I mean, for literally for thought crime, for a tweet he wrote, again, basically tackling someone being anti-Semitic, defending Jewish people, and they handcuffed him in his own home. They also said he had, quote, very Brexity things in his home. The body cam of the police, very Brexity things, including some Spectator magazine articles and some books written by Douglas Murray. What would he have made of things in your and my home, Sam?
They said the quiet bit out loud.
Yep.
This is what the thought police do. And that looked every little bit like the Stasi in East Germany.
Yeah, this was Julian Fulks, wasn't it? Yeah.
This was them going into their house and saying, oh, this is wrong thought, this is wrong speak, you are holding the wrong views. And so we say, despite the fact that you volunteered as a police officer for 10 years, gave your own time to help keep our country safe, we're going to arrest you, we're going to drag you to a cell, and we're going to lock you up, despite the fact we don't lock up burglars or criminals that plague our streets.
Why did he need to be handcuffed as well?
It was a ridiculous situation, but here's the thing that galls me about this. The man in question is now suing the police, and fantastic, and people should support the Free Speech Union who's supporting him in doing so. But none of those officers, not one of them, has been disciplined, has been punished for the fact that they abused their badge to attempt to enforce their political
didn't someone
worldview.
send them there? They wouldn't have decided of their own free will to go there.
Well, but whom?
Yeah.
Who sent them there? A police inspector, a senior police officer? Isn't it worse if a senior police officer that should have known better sent individual low-level police officers to do the work on their behalf? It's staggering to me that the police seem to have completely lost sight of what it is that the public expect them to do, pay them to do, and back them completely in doing.
And again, could you arrest a few burglars first and a few terrorists before then? Just finally, I want to talk about that Supreme Court ruling on. Again, people say it was about trans. It wasn't about trans. It was about women. It was a Supreme Court ruling about women. It's about a month ago now. We've still got body after body, hospital after hospital, theatre, union, goodness knows what, saying, no, not going to obey that ruling. No, nothing has changed. The ruling was very, very clear. If you have a single-sex provision, whether it's toilet, a refuge, a prison, or whatever it is, if it's single-sex, and therefore it's for women only in particular, not an issue with men, by the way, not an issue there. If it's women only, then only women are allowed in, and they are biologically women, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon. Britain's largest teaching union, the National Education Union, wrong about everything. Do not let these people near your children is my answer. They have voted in a weekend ballot to campaign against that ruling on gender. They insist that, well, the article says trans women in schools, no, they mean trans-identifying male teachers in schools, must be allowed to use the women's toilets. That is in breach of the law. Any school that allows that can be sued, can they not? And there are lots of bodies saying we are simply not going to obey the law. Oh, interesting, by the way, Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament building, they're not going to be allowing trans-identifying men, who we call trans women, but they're men, to use the women's toilets. So they've obviously sought legal advice. Any organisation, anybody, any cafe, any school, any university, any workplace, anywhere at all, if they say, no, if you're a man but you claim you're a woman, whether you've got a gender recognition certificate or not, and you go into the women's toilets, they are allowing a breach of the law, and they will be sued to the end of nowhere, won't they?
These people are going into our schools and they are filling our children with these kind of ideas.
Yep.
Is it any wonder that so many more children now go through adolescence with mental health problems, confusion about who they are, their place in the world, young men in particular that keep getting told that they're evil or wrong or there's something about them? Because the people that populate the schools in this country that teach our children consistently, time and time again, turn out to be, on the instruction of their unions, mad, crazy, leftist people pushing propaganda on our kids. I'm worried about our children. I'm worried about what they think about the world they're going into to live in. And it's high time that we started really questioning who it is that we let teach our kids and what ideas they're pushing on them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Lots of calls coming in. We'll get to them in just a moment. 0344 499 1000 in particular on Keir Starmer, what he had to say today. Do you believe a word of it on immigration? That's up next. This is Talk.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty layabouts is if you do a job with your hands, then you are working and in some way perhaps more important, but they don't mean it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. For me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, Sam Armstrong still here as well. Let's get straight to your calls coming in about Keir Starmer promising net migration will fall significantly by 2029, announcing a whole load of new measures. He failed, though, to set a cap on numbers. What's your reaction? Do you believe him? 0344 499 1000. Let's go straight to Jamie, who's in Cambridge. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, Julia.
Hello. What do you want to say?
Quite frankly, I just don't believe a word of it. I mean, when he got in, straight away he cancelled the Rwanda plan, not saying, didn't really do anything else.
Yeah.
And I just don't see. I just don't believe anything he says.
If you go back a year and the Tories had announced this, he'd be up in the chamber, up in the media briefings, saying how awful this was.
Exactly. Also, that parents, mum lives in Boston, Lincolnshire. Every time I go there, it's just the centre's just full of people drinking. It's they're intimidating. Even she said that she's never really thought of it before, but it's got to stop. And she's next time she's going to vote reform because she's just had enough of it. Walking through town on her own is quite intimidating when it's just
and there has been an incredible change in just the last few years. And again, that was under the Tory watch. Again, I mean, do you think though that there's actually, and as I put this to Richard Tyson, the Deputy Leader of Reform earlier, that there's at least a good sign that the Tories kind of finally recognised it. Only when the polls started looking bad for them. Labour realised, they're getting a threat from reform. The Reform are, any party that Nigel Farage has led ends up influencing, whether you get an EU referendum and things like that, actually they've kind of woken up that they cannot ignore this and just basically call us all bigoted and racist anymore.
Well, I think they've only really done it because of the results of, like was been mentioned, because of the results of reform. Otherwise, I don't think this would even be a thing. I don't think he would have said anything about it because it seems that they haven't tried to, anything about reducing the numbers. In fact, it's just everywhere you look, it just seems it's getting more. It's not getting less.
Do you think Labour actually don't really, their heart's not in it? I mean, it would appear that the Tories' hearts weren't in it either, but that actually they don't really think it's a problem.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, I don't think they, underneath, I just don't think they'll change it. I just don't think he's got it. He just doesn't have it. He's he's not a good leader. I don't. But it wouldn't encourage me. I think if anything, it'd be very minimal, but it wouldn't encourage me to vote for Labour. I would just never do it.
That's interesting. It's not going to work. The plan does not work. Jamie, thank you for that. Let's go to Daniel, who's in Epsom. Good morning to you, Daniel. What do you want to say?
Oh, hiya, Julia. No one can trust the word that Starmer says. Yeah. The Con-Lab Uniparty is over. It's finished. If you don't listen to the majority of Britons and you ignore us, you lose. And this.
Well, no, hold on a minute. He would say, but we are listening now.
Yeah, but about 30 years too late. The Con-Lab Uniparty, this is not a new issue, this immigration issue. Yeah. But I'll tell you what's happened, right? People like me 25 years ago were saying, oh, immigration's out of control, and everyone would call you far right and a racist and a fascist. But what's happened is, in recent years, the problem has got so bad in our inner cities, and the decline and degradation has got so bad that all these upper middle class girls are getting sexually harassed, and the MPs' lives are in danger, and they're getting threatened, and people are having their phones stolen, and all the upper middle class avocado and toast types are getting beaten up in London. And now they're starting to go, do you know what? They were right all along, and we can't take the moral high ground anymore. That was never theirs to take in the first place, and they're coming around to the way that the majority think and feel. And having listened to Richard Tice, one of the best things to do when he gets in at Kent Council, we don't want any illegal migrants, we won't house them. Let's find Lib Dem councils and Green councils and give them all of the illegal migrants.
Do what the Republicans did to the Democrats in America. Can I just read something to you? One of the things the Prime Minister said this morning was he celebrates Britain's diversity, but without rules, he says, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. I mean, fair point. The refugee charity Care for Calais has accused the Prime Minister of, they say, fanning the fire of the far right by using that language. The Chief Executive, Steve Smith, says this is dangerous language for any Prime Minister to use. Has Starmer forgotten last year's far right riots? Shameful language like this will only inflame the fire of the far right and risk further race riots that endanger survivors of horrors such as war, torture and modern slavery. Starmer must apologise. Daniel, what do you say to that?
Well, we've got to the point now where these do-gooders are calling basically the majority of Britain's far right. Okay, if you don't want the erosion of your society and things to continue to decline and degrade in our country, you must be some kind of far right bigot. You know, and that's unfortunately for them anyway. It's that we're about to see the biggest political earthquake in UK political history. The revolution's going to be televised. Myself, my family, everyone I know is going to vote reform because the main two parties cannot be trusted. Okay. They've had 30, 40 years to do the things we've asked them to do.
And it's not just that. They told us each time the elections they would do it and then didn't do it. Daniel, great call as always. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And Jamie, lots of other calls coming. We'll get to those as we can. First, though, it's time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a weekend away in Munich at the end of May to watch the biggest game in European football. I'm talking, of course, about the Champions League final. Also, we're putting the small matter of £5,000 in your pocket to spend however you want. Have a listen.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive £5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Oh, take a breath, Mike, take a breath. Don't miss out on that. A brilliant giveaway from our colleagues at TalkSport just down the corridor. Very good luck. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we are going to be talking about the thought police and what are you going to do if the police turn up and handcuff you for a tweet and they found out you've got some quote, very Brexity things, unquote, in your home. Watch out, people. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Lots of calls coming in. Do keep your calls coming. 0344 499 1000. Get some of your texts and tweets as well in the next hour. Coming in thick and fast about what Keir Starmer had to say. Right now, let's turn our attention to, well, the thought police, because that's kind of the only police we seem to have these days. Sorry you got raped. Sorry you got burgled. Sorry you had your bag stolen. But actually, we're really not that interested. We're too busy worrying about hurty tweets. That seems to be the case all the time, and certainly was the case for Julian Fawkes. He's a former special constable from Gillingham, and he was detained at his home by 6 officers from Kent Police. This was back a few years ago. What was his crime? Well, extraordinarily, he was questioned about a tweet that he wrote, and it was a tweet which he'd sent to a pro-Palestinian account online, in which he'd said, "One step away from storming Heathrow, looking for Jewish rivals." This after reports of an anti-Semitic mob storming a Russian airport. I think you'll remember that story. We talked about it on the show. Mr. Fawkes, extraordinarily, found himself handcuffed on his own doorstep by 6 police officers from the very force he had himself worked for, equipped with batons and pepper spray. They then searched his house, and extraordinarily, the body cams of the police revealed that among the things they said when they searched was, well, spending their time being a little bit concerned about the, quote, very Brexity things that they had found in his home, including copies of The Spectator magazine and books by Douglas Murray. Well, let's talk about this with Harry Miller. He's a former police officer and founder of Fair Cop, who himself faced arrest for a tweet that he'd written actually on trans issues. Very good morning to you, Harry.
Yeah, good morning,
Thanks for
Julia.
joining us. I mean, this is extraordinary. This has happened to a former special constable. There is no question at all when you look at the post he made, the tweet he made at the time. There is no question at all about this. Absolutely not an incitement to violence, not causing offence, not even though that's a crime, by the way. Nothing, didn't add zero. There is nothing wrong with that message. Someone, though, called the police, presumably a pro-Palestinian activist, and the police turned up. You were a copper yourself. So explain to me, what is the decision for police to turn up at someone's house because someone says they don't like a particular tweet, when they surely must have looked at the tweet, when they don't bother turning up if your house has been burgled? Who makes that decision?
Well, there's no justification for this whatsoever. There is no crime here. Without a victim, and there is no victim in this case, there cannot be a crime. So the police had no business whatsoever going round to this gentleman's house. Where are they getting this idea from? I don't know. I think they're getting it from chief constables, they're getting it from PCCs, who are utterly useless, and they're getting it from the cancer upon our society, which is the College of Policing, which is, in terms of effectiveness, it is a massive, expensive chocolate fireguard, and it needs shutting down immediately. Now, if the police turned up at my house in this manner, I would treat them in the way that they are, and that is they are burglars. They are coming into my house with a threat. You know what? I would have more respect for them if they were wearing ski masks and had jemmed the back door open, because flashing their warrant cards, strolling in, going through bookshelves on the pretext that you've committed a crime. well, it's absolutely wrong, and it makes a mockery of the rule of law and a mockery of policing.
And this is the thing. So we know that he has won an apology from the chief of Kent Police. However, you know, he's also, with the help of the Free Speech Union, taking legal action, and no doubt at all will be due compensation. Of course, the police don't have their own money. It's our money. We'll be paying that compensation. The crucial thing here, though, is will anybody be disciplined? Will anyone lose their job for sending those police officers there? I've got an issue with the officers being concerned about very Brexity things. I mean, God, I remember it brings back the time when there were some people who were basically told they couldn't foster children because apparently they were UKIP voters. You remember that? That was beyond the pale. Now, but this is the thing. Someone made the decision to send those officers, decision to send 6 officers. Now, whoever made that decision, they need to lose their job, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been saying this for a long, long time. Apologies come easy, and they keep talking about, oh, we got this one wrong, and it's a learning opportunity.
It's a lot they're getting wrong.
It's fine if you learn, but they never, ever learn. This is not a glitch in the system. This is the system. It keeps happening on a regular basis, which is why I'm on your show and other shows quite so often.
Yeah.
It is the new normal, and it's not going to stop until some very important people start losing their job. For me, I would sack everybody involved in this, right the way from the chief constable, right the way down to the station mouse. Anybody that was involved in this, I would say you are not fit to wear the uniform. You are not the kind of person who we...
Hold on a minute. Are those individual PCs, are they entitled to say, sorry, Sarge, this is ridiculous. Someone's complained about a tweet. I've read the tweet. There's nothing wrong with the tweet. We can't go to this guy's house. Are they entitled to say that? Or do they have to do Nuremberg style, just following orders?
Absolutely. When every police officer swears an oath to the Crown, and that is to uphold the law to the best of their ability. Now, you cannot say with clear conscience that this was trying to uphold the law. There was no law that had been broken. So I would say it is incumbent upon every officer, regardless of rank, to say, no, I am not going to do this. I don't care whether the chief constable himself or herself comes down and tells me, I am not going to do it because absent of a victim and absent of a crime, I am not going to breach an individual right to live without interference from the state.
And own a Douglas Murray book. I mean, I'm saying, God forbid they came into my home and they found all the books about Brexit and things, and God forbid my Union Jack dress that I wore on Brexit night on stage in Parliament Square. I mean, I'd be in the clink for months.
Yeah, same as me. I've got books on Hitler. I've got books on the American Civil War written from the Southern point of view. I mean, I am absolutely a terrorist in waiting, according to the logic of these complete and utter lunatics.
Absolutely.
There is no reason for them to be police officers. Let them do something else.
Indeed. Let's also talk about another case that happened at the end of last week in terms of the actual prosecution. The arrest had already happened. This is a man called Hamit Koskan who burned a copy of the Muslim holy book, the Quran, outside the Turkish consulate in London. He was making a clear political statement, and he extraordinarily he'd faced charges. And the charges was originally included harassing the religious institution of Islam. Now, it was pointed out by everybody, including, by the way, the Shadow Justice Secretary, that there was no such crime. There was no such offence. Extraordinary that the CPS thought there was. They have now amended the charge against this man and basically saying they removed references to the institution of Islam and a new charge, they say, more accurately reflects the alleged offence, and it's going to be updated. He was he was motivated wholly or partly by hostility towards members of a religious group, namely people following Islam, based on the membership of that group, and that is a breach of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 and the Public Order Act 1986. Here's the thing, though. We don't have a blasphemy law in this country. We did until a few years ago, and we got rid of it. It is not a crime in this country to criticise a religion or criticise the teaching of religion or the institution of religion, any religion. We do, however, though, have a de facto blasphemy law, but only for the religion of Islam. What do you make of these charges?
Absolute nonsense. I mean, if we're going to start taking offence on behalf of a group or individuals within a group, then what the police need to do is they need to head down to the Prince of Wales Theatre in London and close down the Book of Mormon, because the Book of Mormon plays every single night and it rips a new a-hole in the whole.
Without apologies for that.
Sorry, in the whole theology of Mormonism. But that's been running without any form of police interference at all for years. They are only interested in protecting the Islamic vote, and it's because of the vote that they're protecting. And we all know that Islam is a seedbed for a whole number of fanatics. Now, of course, there are a lot of very peace-loving Muslims, but if you're a peace-loving Muslim, then you simply take a little bit of offence on the chin and say, this is the price of living in a free society.
Yeah. Plenty of countries you can live in which do have a blasphemy law, and a lot of the people have come from those countries because they want to live in a freer country.
Yeah, exactly. We kowtow to Islam and the Islamists simply because we're afraid of them. We're afraid of them in a very literal, physical way. And we're afraid of losing their bloc vote.
Well, I'm not afraid of losing their bloc vote because I'm not a politician, but they certainly are. I'm telling you quite categorically, it's the only time I edit myself, otherwise I speak very freely, because I don't want to have a panic alarm in my home like many people who have publicly made certain points. I don't want to have to be lived like the Batley grammar school teacher. I don't want to have to live like many people who genuinely in fear for their life on a daily basis because of that threat, because the threat of death, beheading, of people going after your family as well, is so great from the Islamic fundamentalists, and we're seeing no action by the police and no action by politicians who are actually in power to actually stop that and limit that and take on the people who are making those threats.
Yeah, that's right. Islamophobia is a perfectly rational fear as far as I'm concerned. I also limit myself a little bit, not too much, but a little bit, because there is a very real threat that's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4% of mad mullah-inspired Muslims are likely to decide to exercise jihad.
Just to clarify, there are statistics from polling over the years suggesting that a minority, but it's a sizable number of people in the early tens of thousands of people in this country who follow the Muslim religion do ascribe to that level of extremist Islam, who genuinely believe that blasphemy should be punished by death.
Yeah, you only need a very, very tiny minority who take the concept of jihad literally, and then you're in a huge amount of trouble. And so it's quite logical to be a little bit wary and afraid of Islam. What is illogical is for a government to criminalise us because of that fear. It's a perfectly logical, common sense position to take, to be wary of Islam and Islamists.
Okay, thank you very much, Harry Miller, former police officer and founder of Fair Cop. Thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, you do a lot of work with the Free Speech Union. Now, you've dealt with a couple of the cases we're talking about, indeed. But again, as with all these cases, you think like, oh, well, they end up getting off because they haven't really committed a crime and everything's fine, even if they're charged. And we'd go back to Alison Pearson and things like that. But as we know, the process is the punishment.
All of these lives will be permanently, totally, not totally, but in a significant way changed. People will look at the police different. Everyone looks at the police different. But here's the difference. If police, quite rightly, are involving sort of police brutality, in all the cases we've seen, they're punished for it. If they fill in their paperwork wrong, they're punished for it. If they do any kind of thing wrong, they're punished for it, except one thing. If they attack the free speech rights of ordinary British people, time and time again, in each and every case, none of these
But I think we need to go
punished.
for the people on high. And again, if we polish the policing, it's got to go. End of, nothing to discuss. 11:47 is the time. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about the threat to prison guards from extremist Islamist terrorists behind bars. We're going to talk to former prison governor Ian Atchison up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Nigel realises he don't want career politicians in his party. He doesn't want these waste of time, people that have just got no career or no business mind behind. He wants real people that know what they're talking about in business, and obviously someone that can get behind them on apprenticeships. I mean, apprentices are the future, James.
What really is at the back of the minds of some of these lefty layabouts is if you do a job with your hands, then you are working and in some way perhaps more important, but they don't mean it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your company. 11:49 is the time. Let's go straight to our next topic now with Ian Atchison. He's a former prison governor. He's also author of Screwed, Britain's Prison Crisis and How to Escape It, and talk about, well, the crisis for prison guards in our prisons right now. A very good morning to you, Ian.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, it's particularly, relates back to extremist Islam. You actually wrote a major report for the government about, the threat of Islamic extremists behind bars and how to deal with it. But there have been demands from the prison authority, so prison guards unions for supermax security measures for the very worst inmates and separating radical Muslim prisoners to stop violence in Britain's jails. This after two cases. First of all, of course, we had the Hashim Abedi. He's the brother of Salman Abedi, the Manchester Arena bomber, and he is alleged to have thrown boiling oil along with on three different prison guards, one of whom is severely hospitalised. And then over the weekend we had the allegations that Axel Rudikabana, the Southport killer, is alleged to have thrown boiling water from a kettle in his own cell over a prison officer. Again, had to be taken to hospital. Most of us will just be wondering, how on earth are prisoners who are behind bars for such serious, heinous crimes able to get access to boiling water and boiling oil?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think it speaks to a deterioration in the way that we manage people who are highly dangerous. And I've said this before, I detect a real movement from sensible steps to protect the risk of prison staff being harmed, to a sort of culture of appeasement, really, which is a very, I suppose, well-meaning but misguided attempt to say, well, if we give these prisoners lots of things, then hopefully they will be compliant. And it's exceptionally naive. But just going back to what you've said, so in the last 3 weeks, what's happened in our high security prisons? We've had a prisoner-on-prisoner homicide in HMP Whitemoor in our close supervision centre, which is the highest, supposedly the highest degree of physical control we have.
Not that close supervision, I think we can safely say.
Indeed. As you've said, officers hospitalised after being stabbed and covered in scorching oil at Frankland, and now another officer hospitalised after allegedly having boiling water thrown over him in Belmarsh by Axel Rudikabana. So what joins those three events? They're all carried out by perpetrators with records of extreme premeditated violence, serving very long sentences in our highest security prisons. These places, by the way, are not overcrowded, which is normally the go-to excuse for anything going wrong in prisons. And these are places where it is absolutely essential that order and control is maintained, both for national security and also, in order to recruit and retain men and women who put on a uniform in the morning and do one of the most difficult and dangerous jobs in public life. Yeah. So, Rudikabana, for example, the judge said that he had a settled and determined intention to carry out horrific crimes of violence. Now, if what is alleged to have happened in Belmarsh over the weekend is true, what it simply means is that the people that are managing these prisons and managing this risk are completely out of touch with, it's not just the possibility here, it's the absolute reality of what these people are capable of doing. Hashim Abedi has already attacked prison staff inside Belmarsh's special security unit. Again, one of the most secure pieces of real estate that we have. So something is going very badly wrong in terms of the priority that we're applying and the balance we're applying inside our highest security prison.
As you say, this idea that we'll just keep people happy and they'll be compliant and we can all get on with it. Well, look, we do know there is an overcrowding issue in a lot of prisons. We know that actually one of the reasons why there's so many drugs now is inmates are left 23 hours a day in their cells instead of doing something useful. But as you say, say that's not an excuse in these maximum security units. But as part of this, again, this attitude, and we saw this, I remember thinking of the London Bridge killer, and that was a guy who'd gone to a conference supposedly and utterly, completely rehabilitated, and explaining to do-gooders about how he was rehabilitated as an Islamist terrorist. And what a surprise he wasn't. He then went on to kill them and then had to be tackled by members of the public as he crossed London Bridge. An extraordinary event. But again and again, the people working behind bars, they kind of do-gooder, bleeding heart liberals who want to believe the best of people and simply don't accept that some people are just pure evil and some people really will just take every opportunity to kill, and they are dangerous and need to be treated as such. And that's just not a situation we should be putting any of our our prison guards in. And I do wonder sometimes why on earth anyone would work as a prison guard in any of our prisons, let alone in any of these maximum security units nowadays.
Well, I'm loath to correct you here, Julia.
No, please do.
Please can we call them prison officers? They do a very much more complex job than the word guard connotes. So yeah, I mean, when I joined the prison service, I was a prison officer for about 18 months as part of the graduate scheme, and then I served as the top uniformed officer at the time for another 18 months. And when I joined, it was a vocation. It was something that literally could change lives and sometimes even could save lives. I think that's been destroyed. And part of that, and part of the reason we see an acute recruitment and retention crisis for frontline prison staff, is that we have badly trained, poorly selected youngsters being put into uniform and thrown into an environment which is way different from what they've been told to expect. And they're ill-equipped to deal with highly sophisticated and often hyper-violent prisoners, so they leave before their probation is finished. Yeah. So we've got to get order and control sorted out, not just in our high security prisons, but across the board. I want to give you a statistic which kind of illustrates the scale of the problem and the detachment of the prison service bureaucrats from what's happening in the front line, because this is a cultural problem, not just an operational one. So back in 2013, prison assaults were running at 2,987 a year, and that was assaults against staff. Now, that was the first time the prison service had said it was conducting a review into whether or not prison officers should have stab vests. Okay? So over 10 years later, we still don't have any resolution of that, and assaults on prison staff are now running at 10,605 a year. In that period of time, the number of people at prison service headquarters, non-operational people, has increased almost fivefold. So something is clearly going wrong here. The capacity and the will of people who are working at a senior level in the prison service to protect frontline staff. Now, Shabana Mahmood has one opportunity at the minute.
She's the Justice Secretary.
At the top. Justice Secretary. There's a vacancy at the top, and she needs to seize that opportunity at the top of the prison service to put in place people and senior managers who actually both care about frontline staff and are able to protect them. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're not going to have a prison service that is capable of protecting society.
No, absolutely. We certainly can't even protect the prison officers themselves. Can I ask you just finally, why is it, as we understand it, would a prisoner like Tommy Robinson be, I mean, we know he's behind bars for a good reason. I hold no candle for the man. He's not a political prisoner. We know he's in a segregated unit for his own safety because of threats to him, because, again, prisons cannot keep fellow prisoners safe. But he, we understand, doesn't have access to a kettle. Why on earth does someone like Raxel Rudikabana have access to a kettle, or Hashim Abedi have access to the kitchens and to boiling oil and the like, when someone like Tommy Robinson is confined to his cell for basically 23 hours a day?
Well, I can't speak to what is in Robinson's cell, but thousands of prisoners every day across hundreds of prisons get up in the morning and make themselves a cup of tea with a kettle without any problem at all. But always, whatever is in a prisoner's cell ought to be subject to a dynamic risk assessment to make sure that they don't have anything, if it's suspected they will do, that would be able to harm others. So it's, having a kettle is not a human right.
No, exactly.
It should be commensurate with the security risk. And where there are, kettles or other implements or other available ways to hurt prison staff.
Then they need to be gone. Ian, so good to talk to you. I know you're an absolute expert in this. Ian Atchison, former prison governor, author of Screwed, Britain's Prison Crisis, How to Escape It. He did a massive report on how to tackle Islamist extremism behind bars. Sam Armstrong, do you want to come in on that?
This is not complicated. In America, they have it all fixed out. They have the supermax of prisons. How many prison officers need to face life-changing injuries just for doing their job before we realise that Hashim Abedi, that Axel Rudikabana, that any of these deranged maniacs do not have a human right to Earl Grey tea in the morning?
No, it is utterly extraordinary, isn't it? The world has gone utterly mad. So much more to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, going to be talking to Lord David Frost about the new immigration announcements from Keir Starmer. But will it make any difference at all to the numbers coming to this country? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Very much appreciate your company. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is, as always, great to have your company, particularly on a beautiful or warm day. Not stopping you putting the calls in there, in particular in response to what Keir Starmer had to say at 8:30 this morning. He promised that net migration will fall significantly. That's his word, by 2029. He failed, though, to set a cap on numbers. Your reaction to that, to what he had to say? Do you believe him? Why do you think he's motivated by this? He says it's because it is what he believes. It's not because of those local election results where Reform are snapping at Labour's heels. Indeed, look likely to take a load of those Reform, those seats, those red wall seats, which they did rather well in the local elections. Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word Talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. You can leave a message on our YouTube page as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate. Message. Not only are we going to be talking about that under these new plans from Keir Starmer, but also going to be talking about Britain's largest teaching union, the NEU, Been wrong about everything forever, by the way. They voted to campaign against the Supreme Court ruling on gender, insisting that trans-identifying male teachers in schools must be allowed to use women's toilets. Well, that would be breaking the law, so good luck with that, chaps. And new research suggests that weight loss injections like Wegovy and Mounjaro could cut the risk of cancer by almost half. It's amazing. These drugs are just the miracle cure for pretty much everything. But is it too good to be true? Well, we'll talk more about that throughout the show. Delighted to say Sam Armstrong is still with me, Conservative commentator, and joining us, delighted to say, in the studio, Lord Frost. It's great. It's becoming something of a regular. Conservative peer, former Cabinet Office Minister, and, of course, former Chief Brexit negotiator.
Great to be here.
Lovely to have you here. Let's just go through some of the announcements we've got from Keir Starmer. A lot of it was trailed. We had some of it trailed last week, certainly by Sunday papers. But basically, under the plans, there will be 50,000 fewer visas for low-skilled workers, including care workers. Skilled visas will require graduate degrees. Migrants will have to wait up to 10 years rather than the current 5 years before they can apply for citizenship while they've got indefinite leave to remain. Judges are going to have their powers to block deportations basically curbed when it comes to them using human rights laws. We're going to see tougher English language tests for migrants and adult dependents. Also, a higher education requirement at A-level basic standard for skilled worker visas. So education, that will go up to graduate level, but crucially, people actually being able to speak the language, having good qualifications. It all sounds great. Keir Starmer used the phrase "take back control." Might be familiar to some of our audience. He talked about a significant fall in net migration. He said we risk becoming an island of strangers if we don't strengthen those rules. That's been called out by the refugee charity Care for Calais. They say that he's stirring up the far right by saying that. What was your response to what he had to say, Lord Frost?
Well, I mean, there's more joy in heaven over a sinner that repenteth and all that. But the trouble is, I don't think he really repents of it. He spent the last few years campaigning against any attempt to stop immigration, and we're supposed to believe all of a sudden he's changed his mind.
Well, he says it's not because of those election results where Labour were trounced, as your lot were trounced just as well, even worse.
We
had more seats to lose. He says no, it's because this is something he believes in.
I mean, it's just very difficult to take seriously. The Labour Party's got half its voting base really strongly dislikes immigration. I agree with them. Half of it is a sort of progressive left that really loves it. And
well, they've got cleaners and nannies and gardeners and someone the barista in their local coffee shop.
Exactly, and they don't suffer, many of the social cohesion consequences. So this is a tilt to the bit of his voting base that doesn't like immigration, rightly so. Will it last? I very much doubt it. Will it make any difference? I doubt it very much. Will he get any political benefit out of it? No, because everyone can see he doesn't want to do it.
I mean, and that's the thing. No, I mean, there are a number of things that he seems to be able to sort of turn on a dime on, whether it's are trans women women? Apparently not this week. They were a month ago. It's so difficult to tell. And immigration. I mean, last night I heard from Keir Starmer, certainly before the election, immigration was a good thing. It was an economic benefit to this country. He's now questioning that. Anyone talking about the need for integration and better language skills and things, they might have paid a little bit of lip service, but basically you were a racist and a bigot for saying it. He's changed on that. Are those not, this is a point I put to the Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice earlier in the studio, is there not, as you say, look, sinners, repenters, that's a good thing. Is it not at least a good thing? We've now got 3 major parties, combined, 75% of the vote? Basically all saying we accept that immigration has to come down. We accept it's not an unadulterated good thing. We accept there's an economic cost, there's a cultural cost, and we need to tackle it. That's a good thing, isn't it? The Overton envelope has shifted.
Yeah. That is a good thing, and as you say, we can talk about stuff that we didn't used to be able to talk about a long time ago.
Without being called a bigot.
Quite recently, without being called a bigot. But the problem is, I still think a lot of the kind of mainstream political class is sort of deluded about what levels of immigration are okay. That we brought it down from whatever it was, 900,000 to 600,000-700,000 in the last year of the Tory.
Come on, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, now they think, the political class thinks, if we can get it down to like 300,000, maybe 250,000, that would be okay. Meanwhile, the rest of the country is thinking, That is just far, far too many. You've just got to do something completely different.
But the Home Office predictions, and this is the interesting thing, where we haven't got a number from Keir Starmer or from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. I've interviewed her many times before she refused to come on my show anymore. And I'd say, give us a clue, give us a number. What would be the number? Well, we don't want to cap. No, but what would the number be? Rough. How many is too many? And I'd say to the nearest 10,000, to the nearest 100,000, to the nearest. I'll accept to the nearest million. But can you give me a vague idea of how many would be too many? OK, you might not want to give an exact number. Now, the Tories are looking at, and Kemi Badenoch's pushed this idea, and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he's done a lot of play on this, and he used to be a Home Office Minister. He knows of what he speaks. Having a vote in Parliament, an annual vote by all members of Parliament for a cap, so they are beholden to their electorates on that, and setting that cap based on, a lot of like what business think they need and the like. The trouble with that, of course, is that business always say they need more immigrants because, of course, it keeps wages down.
That's the problem. And until we kind of break that mentality and force business to kind of, bring in British workers and train them and
how
make
do we
difference,
do that?
Then, well, you've got to have a credible cap that the government is going to stick to under political pressure. And obviously, we're not going to get that from Labour.
But businesses can't physically say. I mean, look, there is an issue. If you bring in a load of people from abroad who work as care workers, you're going to keep, say, wages down. Now, they talked about a cap on the number of visas for working in care homes. Sam Armstrong made the very, very good point earlier that actually, even though we imported, well, how many was it? Was it 150,000 people to work in care homes on those specific visas last year? We still have a massive shortage of people working in care homes. So clearly something's going wrong there.
Possibly they're not all working in care homes. I mean, that might be part of the problem.
Do you think? They could work in Sainsbury's, so they get an extra £1 an hour. But this is the thing. Businesses can't physically force people to take the jobs. They say again and again, we put the wages up, we can't get people to do it. You know as well as I do that actually an awful lot of care home funding comes from the state, actually. And so the states, local councils haven't got any more money from the government, they haven't got more money to give to care homes. In fact, they're already using private residents to subsidise those who are there from the council. That is quite normal business practice in those care homes. They can't physically say to somebody, I'm going to drag you into work in the care home at minimum wage or a couple of quid more than that, when that person can sit on welfare or maybe work 16 hours a week, just 2 days a week, and then have everything topped up and the housing benefit, the child benefit, the tax credits, and the blah, blah, blah. They can't physically do that. The only person who can do that is the Prime Minister.
That's right, and it's going to get worse with this new employment bill when that goes through. It's going to make it even more restrictive to employ people in care homes for the kind of hours and flexibility that's needed.
People can work from home.
maybe that will be possible. Who knows? That's the difficulty. It is too easy not to go out and earn a living, and I know it's unfashionable to say it, but the minimum wage has been pushed up. It's very easy to get on benefits. All of those things mean that there's a lot of people sitting around not working, and until we solve that problem,
and there's some 9 million people of working age who are not working. Many of those are carers, they're students, they're doing other things, but there's thought that there are roughly 5 million people who could work if their anxiety levels or stress levels or a depression on a Monday morning. And I'm not trying to make light of people who genuinely do have those issues, but I simply don't believe that we have it on a different scale than any other Western European nation, and our figures suggest that we do. What is the answer to that? Because you're not going to be able to say to business, right, we're going to cap the number of people coming in from abroad, we're going to limit the number of people, and you're going to carry on being able to actually do these vital jobs like looking after our elderly and infirm in care homes. And again, lots of people say, oh, you should care for your loved one at home. It's not possible for many people to care for someone with severe dementia in their home. They can't be there 24/7. It doesn't work. People, the people who used to deal with this were women. Now they're working. They're paying half the mortgage and the rent. They're not able to care for a loved one at home. Unless you get people back to work, do you think that there is any understanding within the Labour Party about what is needed to get people back to work on welfare? Because there wasn't that much in the Tory party when you lot were in office.
I don't think they do. I think a lot of mainstream politicians don't really understand it, to be honest. You can't keep pushing up the cost to employers. That's one thing. You can't carry on making it more and more inflexible to do anything. The market economy is a beautiful mechanism if you allow it to adjust. Do you remember a few years back the shortage of HGV drivers?
Yep.
We relaxed the rules, and we brought and we brought people in who had maybe given up being HGV drivers. They came back
wages
in, and the wages responded because there was a need, and the system adjusted. And that's what happens if you try and keep out of the market. Unfortunately, this government, the past government, to a large extent, likes tinkering. It likes thinking it knows best. And the result is it messes it up.
Well, we're told we're going to have this limit on the number of people coming to this country, but bearing in mind they're saying they're going to get it significantly down. But given that last year to June 24 we had 728,000 net people arriving, more than 1.2 million actually foreigners coming here. 86% of those were from non-EU countries, so from further afield. 906,000 was the figure for 23. I mean, just astounding figure. Those people are still here, by the way. Yeah. In terms of dealing with the people who are already here, having strict rules for people's qualifications to come here, for their ability to earn a decent salary, ability to speak English, to bring dependents, how many they can bring, adult dependents being expected to speak English. I think everyone would say, yeah, we're happy with that, tick, 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 tick. Until it's quietly got rid of. I mean, I'm sure, as it always, and it happened on the tour as well. But what are we going to do about the people who are already here? We have a lot of people who have illegal migrants here who've come over through the lorry route or on the boats. We have probably about 1.5 million people who've come here on student work or other visas and have just stayed here, who are working something in the black market or not. We also have huge numbers of people here who are here completely legally, who have absolutely not integrated. Many of them don't speak English, don't share cultural values, are living completely sort of parallel societies. We're told we have these diverse cities like Birmingham and Bradford. Actually, they're not. They're different conclaves. Even in London, I can point to the area that's Afro-Caribbean, point to the area that's Turkish, point to the area that is Bengali, and they are very, very separate. What do we do about that?
That is extremely difficult. I mean, the first thing we should do is make it, more difficult for people to stay indefinitely and pick up British citizenship for nothing. So tightening up those rules is good, and indeed the Tories, that was Kemi's policy as well, just been stolen by Labour. Getting people to integrate and feel part of a society which kind of has lost a lot of pride in itself and its own history is going to be very difficult. The first thing to do is stop making the problem worse, of course. Stop people coming in.
Would you agree with Nigel Farage, net zero on immigration? Basically, that's it, we're done now.
Something
people
like
go
that.
out, people come in, that's the number.
I would say for a time, apart from a small number of, highly skilled workers.
We like them.
But generally we need a pause to kind of a pause for refreshment, as it were, to catch up.
You essentially use the phrase, we need to get those people to integrate. You shouldn't have to get people to integrate, should you? They should want to integrate. If you want to come to this country to live and work, you should be wanting to embrace the culture. And okay, people will say, oh, what about the Brits who go and live in the Costa del Sol and they insist on having, roast beef and potatoes and a full English breakfast every day and they don't learn the lingo. What about them? But perhaps not quite such a threat to Spanish culture. I would also say to them they should learn Spanish and integrate more. But what are we going to do when they don't?
It's a very big problem. I'm not sure what we do. I think we can start by being sort of more proud of our own history and culture, teach it, use English much more than we've become prone to doing.
Lend the translators and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it will take time. Many people who are here still maintain all the connections, go back and forth to the countries they've come from.
Which they're entitled
to do. But people are not going to integrate while they're kind of playing both hands.
In terms of, we've got this EU summit coming up next week. And we're told this is a surrender summit where Keir Starmer, who spent 3.5 years from 2016 onwards desperately trying to stop Brexit from happening until Boris Johnson got elected to get Brexit done with that huge majority. We're told that the plan is to basically have an open door policy. Well, they'll say it'll be strict numbers, but it won't be, for under 30, so 18 to 30-year-olds in Europe to come here to work and study in freely and for a year or two visas, and Brits to go to Europe. Is that just basically opening up free movement again by the back door?
I mean, it depends what the terms are. You know, I would say, you know, I've just said I don't think we should be bringing more people into the country for the time being. But even if you think that we should, it hugely depends on the terms. You know, is it like the Australian scheme we've got, where you have to prove you can support yourself, it's limited time, you need a visa, there are certain things. That's very different to what the EU want, which is if you're 18 to 30, you can show up
off you pop,
and you can work. And we'll have to see where they settle on that spectrum. And the track record of giving stuff away and getting nothing back is pretty strong, and so I think we can guess.
And Keir Starmer, as we know, is a Europhile.
That's right. He wants. I mean, this negotiation it's just not being conducted.
Should we put it in inverted commas?
Yeah.
This negotiation.
It's not being conducted in a normal way, because the aim of it is not to find some sort of balance of advantage and concession. It's just to get closer to the EU. So to achieve that, they're just throwing one thing out after another, whether it comes in this summit or later this spring and summer. Who knows?
But the reality is, of course, there'll be far more young people from poorer countries, and we've got to look, even like Western European countries like Spain and Italy. They've got sort of 50% youth unemployment. Of course, they're more likely to want to come here. I'm not sure we're quite as enticing a country with our economic doldrums at the moment as we used to be, but they more likely want to come here than our young people to go there, and certainly from Eastern Europe as well. So again, it's just not it's not an even exchange, is it?
We were just saying, our big problem is we've got a lot of people who don't want to work, and probably young people to a large extent. So you don't bring in a lot of other people and make that more difficult. It just does not deal with the actual problem that we've got.
Just finally, look, you are our chief Brexit negotiator, got us over the line on that, keen Brexiteer to this day. How worried are you about 6 police officers turning up at your door, handcuffing you and going through your books and periodicals and things to find out whether you've got, quote, very Brexity things in your home? Because this is what happened to former Special Constable Julian Fulks from Gillingham. Actually worked with Kent Police, but after he wrote a post actually defending against anti-Semitism from some pro-Palestinian demonstrations, some absolutely horrific anti-Semitic mob storming a Russian airport, tweeted an activist, "1 step away from storming Heathrow looking for Jewish arrivals." Nothing wrong with his tweet, nothing criminal, no, not offensive, not that that's a crime, but police often think it is. 6 police officers turned up at his door. What do you make of that?
I mean, it is just remarkable, really, that the police give so many resources to these sort of trivial non-crimes. I mean, not only is it not a crime, they completely misunderstood the point he was trying to make.
Yeah, he wasn't advocating.
None of them thought, hang on a minute, maybe this is, a little bit more complicated than we think. I just find it amazing. It did, of course, I mean, everyone's forgotten that it did actually happen in 2023, where this was a Conservative government, Conservative Crime Commissioner in Kent, not Labour. So, everybody takes the blame on this. I keep my Douglas Murray books locked in the safe.
Well, you should have to be very, very careful. I was saying I'm a bit worried because I've got my Union Jack dress I wore on Brexit night in Parliament. So I'd be away. I'd be a lifer. I'd never get out for that.
For it. Yeah.
Lord Frost, thank you very much. Let's bring in Sam Armstrong. Now, you're both Conservatives, but you've both been Conservatives who've not been shy of saying to the people in charge, you're getting this wrong, you need to respond to what the British people want. Do you have any hopes at all that, going back to the immigration issue, and indeed I think this all ties into the whole cultural issue in terms of freedom of speech, the values that we have in this country, pride in our nation, belief that we don't need to import young people to pour our coffee. We can get our own young people to do it, and perhaps better jobs in the future. Nothing wrong with pouring coffee. But do you just think there's any chance that this Labour government is listening?
Well, I think Lord Frost in his, I would say, reform blue tie today.
Yeah, is very reformy.
Did make something of a point about the problem the Conservative Party faces. And I don't want to be unhelpful. I didn't back the current leader in the leadership race, but I don't want to be unhelpful here. But as Lord Frost said, the chief policy of the Conservative Party on migration so far, in which we're attempting to prove that we have now changed as a party, that we are doing something dramatic, bold and different, was so radical, it was just announced by Keir Starmer.
This is a fair point. It's
not great.
Yeah. I mean, Kemi Baden, the Tory leader, she has actually issued a statement saying Labour doesn't believe in secure borders, you can't trust them to protect us. But the response from many voters would simply be, but you guys didn't either.
And the public are expecting to see something very big, very dramatic, very real if they expect us to change. And Cammie's made clear that she's got these policy commissions, but we'll have to wait and see what they come out with in a couple of years' time before we'll see that.
That's not going to fly, is it, Lord Frost? This is the here and now for voters.
I mean, I think obviously there needs to be a big rethink on policy. It's going, a bit too slowly, I think.
I don't know what takes so long for these things. It's like any inquiry into anything. There's no reason for any of this stuff to take so long. You either know what you think or you don't. You look for the evidence, look for the for and against arguments. I think you could have this done and dusted in a month.
I think you could do it very quickly. The detail of policy, of course, nobody knows where we might be 27, 28, 29, but the principles you bring to that really ought to be clear. Yeah. And that's what
I can tell you where we're going to be in 28, 29. We're going to have mass immigration. As Home Office, they're predicting an assumption of 525,000 a year net. Yeah. I'm going to tell you it's going to be above that because they've never once made a prediction that has not been an underestimate. I reckon we're going to have 700,000 a year net every year until then.
Yeah, and wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, and that tie might be the tie of the next Prime Minister. It ain't going to be a Tory at that point. Really good to have you in the studio, Lord Frost, Conservative peer, former Cabinet Office Minister and Chief Brexit negotiator as well. More from Sam Armstrong coming up. We're going to get to your calls and messages up next. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
That was completely wrong. The police were absolutely out of order going into that gentleman's house. He was a former special constable, I think, rifled through his belongings and his wife's belongings and then locked him up in a police cell for a number of hours. It was completely wrong, total waste of police time, complete intrusion into his civil liberties. I think the police have apologised, quite rightly, but it should never have happened in the first place. The police should be concentrating on catching real criminals, not policing Twitter.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. So many top guests, so many top calls coming in. Let's get to some of those calls and messages coming in thick and fast right now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text coming in also at 87222 and tweets, there's still tweets, aren't they, at Talk TV. I'm asking you what you make of Keir Starmer's promise that net migration will fall significantly by 2029, but failing to put a cap on numbers. Sharon says he's 5 years to clean up the mess created by the Conservatives. Let's see. That's a lot of benefit of the doubt, Sharon. Daniel says if this man wanted, he could have sorted this out by 8:30 p.m. tonight. Another 4 years of more broken promises. Shane says, I think by 2029 we'll be busting at the seams. It needs to be addressed now. William says 100% lies. He's just scared because of what happened in the local elections. Labour are disgusting and the Tories useless. If Braverman and Jenrick joined Reform, they would walk the next general election. Ooh. And Saskia says, sadly for Keir, the time of the Uni Party is done. Reform will be the next government. And Russ says, Starmer rushing to the right in response to the successes of Reform. He sounds a bit desperate. Well, let's find out what Andy in Derby has to say. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Good afternoon to you, Andy.
Good afternoon, Empress. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Love the Empress. It's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time.
I know.
When everyone sees sense.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm worried. I think there's a potentially very important missing person out there. Mm-hmm. Martin Hewitt, remember him?
Oh, yes.
In September the 24th, 2024.
In charge of smashing the gangs, I believe.
Exactly, on a salary of £140,000 to £200,000 by Sir Keith, yeah?
Yeah.
My question's fairly simple. What level of scrutiny and accountability is over this fellow? What on earth is he doing every day?
Isn't he the guy working from home quite a lot, or working from Finland or something? Or am I confusing that with someone else?
I'm not sure.
No, I don't know if it was him. Well, bearing in mind, though, you're talking about someone in charge of dealing with illegal migration. The conversation, the speech that Keir Starmer was making was about legal migration.
Yeah, well, he's just trying to shift the narrative, isn't he? Because he can't solve... Well, he can solve it if he wants to, but nobody believes he wants to. But, I mean, this man's paid a lot of money and nobody ever hears from him. So what's he doing?
I mean, hopefully doing his job, but clearly not very well. I mean, we've had, what, over 11,500 arrivals already this year?
Exactly, yeah. And another 200 this morning whilst he was on the podium talking about something that nobody believes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So for you, this is just sleight of hand. Look over here, look over here, look over there, look over there.
Yeah, very clever magician.
OK, Andy, thank you very much. He doesn't believe a word that Keir Starmer says. Let's go to Mark in Lincolnshire. Hello, Mark.
Hi there, Julia Murdoch. You all right today?
Oh, I love my duck. Very well, my love. What do you want to say?
Yeah, it was just obviously the immigration thing. Clearly, I don't believe a damn word bloody Starmer's saying on this. Or I don't really believe anything Conservatives will say on it, including generic. And I don't even believe Farage.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think we're stuffed, to be honest.
And we're stuffed because the politicians don't believe in it and don't want to do it, or because they can't do anything?
Because they seem incapable of grasping the very real crux of the whole problem, Julia, and that is, and I'm sure I've said this to you in the past, you know, until we have a government that is willing to quite literally stop immigration, quite, you know, full on, all the way, the whole thing, just stop it for at least probably 3 to 5 years minimum.
Well, it'd be stopping net migration. We'd have people going in and out. There are always people, you know, tens and tens of thousands of people who leave the country, some of those being people who've come here from abroad, some of those being Brits who want to go abroad.
Yeah, and you don't let anybody in. Simple as. Unless you are desperately in need of somebody really specific to
But hold on, isn't that what we kept being told by the Tories? That no, but we desperately need these hospital workers, we desperately need these care workers, we desperately need these people.
No, none of that nonsense anymore. It has to be people that are quite literally essential.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, the issue is, and like I say, the crux of the problem, which none of them, including Farage, is not going to fix, is the fact that until they do kind of what I've been saying there, stopping all immigration, they will never fix the problems in the country. They will constantly rely on the crux of, you know, mass immigration, which is what Starmer's doing anyway, because he's saying, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And this is the same guy that's just opened us up to a load of low-bar Indian workers that's coming out with the, you know, youth mobility across Europe. You know, and I have a sneaky suspicion that most of those people probably aren't even going to be included on the immigration numbers.
No, because it's an exchange, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an exchange. So, as you were saying earlier, we all know the truth. The truth is more will come than will leave, than will, you know, share that. It's like India. Who wants to particularly work in India? No offence to India.
Yeah.
But,
it's not top of my list. Yes.
Exactly. One of the reasons they keep coming here is because they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, how many British workers are going to be working in India? 100, maybe 1,000?
Yeah.
You know, it's absolutely insane. You know, the whole notion that he's going to do anything about this problem is absolutely crazy. And one final point that nobody's ever mentioned before, and I will mention this, because I think this is potentially an important step as well. You kind of hinted on this a bit earlier, Julia, about the liberal left.
Yeah.
You know, the left-wing activists, the left-wing media kicking off as soon as you try and do anything with this. Well, that's another major issue that needs to be tackled. Farage, he's never said anything on this, because as far as I consider it at this point, Julia, when you have these people, you know, like Care for Calais and stuff like that are being funded by, you know, mysterious figures.
Well, a lot of these charities are funded by taxpayers extraordinarily.
Well, there is that as well. But I view these people as subversives. They are actively working against the interests of this country because they know this. Now, your average 60-year-old granny that might turn up at, you know, one of these marches, you know, with open borders, everybody's welcome. She's just a pawn in the game.
Yeah. But also, most of those people simply don't live with the consequences. They just sit there pretending that everyone who's complaining, all the women saying they're being harassed in the street, are just lying. I mean, it's just extraordinary. Mark Murdoch, I'm going to have to leave it there, get to a break. Thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate that. Coming up, we are going to be talking about some extraordinary stories involving trans people. We're going to be talking to Kate Barker of the LGBT Alliance. First up there, it's time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a weekend away in Munich at the end of May to watch the biggest game in European football, the Champions League final. We're also putting £5 grand in your pocket to spend however you want. Take a listen.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive $5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League final competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Painful. Yeah. And welcome back. Good luck with that incredible giveaway from our colleagues at TalkSport. And coming up, we're going to take a quick break. As I say, back with Kate Barker from the LGB Alliance up next. Plenty more coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. Delighted to be joined by Kate Barker now. She's Chief Executive of the LGB Alliance for Lesbian, Gay and Bisexual People. A very good afternoon to you, Kate.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. I have a number of stories I want to bring up to you. I mean, honestly, if I say, like, oh, are there any items on trans? I mean, there's always about 15 in the news. We have to narrow it down. But I think the most worrying one is the National Educational Union, the NEU, is the biggest teaching union, who, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that they don't agree with the Supreme Court judgment on whether or not a woman is someone who's just sort of a figment of a man's imagination on a Wednesday afternoon, or an actual biological thing, and therefore different from a biological thing that's a man. And they've decided that they're going to campaign for schools to insist that a man who believes he is a woman or identifies as a woman will still be allowed to use the women's toilets. Now, this would quite clearly, under the Supreme Court ruling a month ago, be illegal. But the National Education Union want to push that policy in schools. What do you make of that decision?
I think it's astonishing. I mean, there's been an absolute slew of pronouncements from CEOs to their organisations saying, well, we need a little bit of time to think about this. And most worryingly, they tend to say, we'll get our EDI experts to have a look at it, which I would suggest is how we got into this problem in the first place.
Yeah, they're so expert, they misinterpreted the law for the last 10 years.
Well, exactly. And as I know everybody has been saying, this is a clarification of the law as it stands. There's nothing new about it. All it's pointing out is that you've been breaking the law for 15 years. So the suggestion that you should double down, therefore, is really absurd, particularly because if you look at any of the polls, there was a poll, I think, in the Sunday Independent this week that said, do you agree with the Supreme Court ruling that a woman refers to a biological woman? And 70% said yes, 10% said they didn't know, and 20% said no. So
I'm amazed it was that high, actually. 20% said no. So they don't think that a woman should be defined by her biological sex. That's terrifying to me.
It is terrifying, but I think those people probably just didn't understand the question. I think everybody who understands this and engages in any kind of discussion about it knows complete common
what the
sense.
difference is. Well, that's the thing. It's one of the reasons why I've said before, we need to stop saying, trans women. We say trans-identifying men, because huge number of people, and they talk about, well, should trans women be allowed to use women's toilets? Thinking, well, yeah, of course they should. And eventually, when you delve down into what people think, they genuinely think that this is either actual woman, but they've got some different identity issues, or it's a man who's had his bits cut off, everything, he's intact, he is to all intents and purposes a biological woman on the outside. Not the case at all. Gender recognition certificates, and even the vast majority of men who hold those haven't had any surgery or even had any puberty blockers or anything else. But even if they did, it wouldn't make them a woman.
You're right, and it's the capture of language that has been so complete across everything. Because if we don't have common terms that we can all agree what they mean, it's impossible to have a reasonable discussion about it. But I think that's part of the plan, actually, and this continual sort of a fog of misunderstanding that drops around us around all of these issues is deliberate. Because as soon as there is clarity, as soon as somebody gets it and cuts through, they think it's completely reasonable and it's common sense that a woman is a biological woman and therefore deserves some simple protections around dignity and respect. All reasonable people agree with that.
Exactly. But it has been interesting since the Supreme Court ruling. You had some rulings very quickly about, from the Football Association, cricket and other sports. And we had some very quick announcements from government. Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament, which has been completely insane on this issue for the last few years. They've said, OK, men, doesn't matter how they identify, can't use women's toilets because they're legally for women. And there is, if you provide something that is single sex, it has to be for only that sex. But have you been quite shocked, as I have, by the number of organisations? It's the usual. Someone referred to it the lanyard class. Victoria Peckham referred to them as that. Just the Janice Turner. Sorry, that's her Twitter handle. The lanyard class of people who go, oh no, we run a theatre and we think that men should be allowed into women's toilets, or people who running HR in hospitals seem to think it's okay. Because there's another case, and this involves, and we've had quite a few cases in hospitals, a particular issue for patients in terms of their privacy and their right to be seen by a woman doctor or nurse rather than by a man for certain cases. But also one of the Darlington nurses, those who were forced to share a changing room with a male doctor colleague who identified as trans and made them feel very uncomfortable watching them undress. Karen Danson is one of the 8 nurses who is suing the County Durham and Darlington NHS Foundation Trust after they allowed Rose Henderson, a man, to use women's changing facilities. But she said it's actually, incredibly difficult for her. She said that this male doctor, was asked to assist with a gynecological procedure for herself when she was admitted to hospital. She begged them, the people in charge, not to let him carry out this procedure on her, but it went ahead anyway. I mean, in any other circumstance, this would be considered a criminal act.
Yeah, it's we've been tracking the responses from these organisations, and it's becoming clear that it's the ones that have an LGBTQ staff network, which are the most captured. They have somehow managed to gain such power and such control within these organisations. Frankly, the management are afraid of them. Yeah. But they don't represent LGBT people. They exclusively represent TQ plus people.
Whatever the plus is, I have never worked out what the T has got to do with the LGB, because it's nothing, someone believing they're born in a different body or wants to live somewhere else. It's quite different from who you're sexually attracted to. But also the Q and the A and the I and the plus, utterly meaningless things.
Yeah, I think people are gradually starting to realise what the difference between those two things is. And British people are very tolerant, I think, in the main. But it's taken decades to achieve a level of equality for gay people that's now being threatened by kind of an overreach by the TQ plus element, who've attached themselves to a legitimate movement, which is the gay rights movement, and are steadily undermining everything we do. So I'm really keen that people understand that lesbians, gay men and bisexuals have got no interest in ensuring that biological men can get undressed in front of some nurses, or that can insist on using women's toilets. It's entirely a TQ plus drive and initiative. And it's really important that people understand the difference so that we don't lose sympathy and end up with our rights being impacted as well.
Well, of course, your organisation has been accused quite falsely of being bigoted and transphobic for standing up for gay rights, and particularly, again, I know specifically the rights of lesbian women, not to have men insist that, well, I call myself a woman and therefore you're bigoted if you won't agree to date me or have sex with me. Extraordinarily. Let me talk to you, though, about, so on the other side of the divide, which is a new TV series on BBC Three. I didn't know BBC Three was still a thing. Apparently it is. But pop goddess, as she's described by the BBC, Dannii Minogue, sister of Kylie, of course, who's played, been judge on X Factor and things like that. She is playing Cupid in the TV series, the second season of I Kissed a Boy. Now, the point of this, it's the first ever gay dating show. And they have 10 singles and they're matched up. They meet for the very first time. Quite unusual from straight dating shows, or I think probably women's gay dating shows. Two men meet up and literally the first thing they do is kiss each other and then they see how they get on. What is very interesting is, of course, is that one of the men, in inverted commas, who's on the gay dating show for men is actually what's called a trans man, i.e. a trans-identifying woman who is proudly showing her mastectomy scars and living with a little moustache, living as if she were, projecting herself as if she were a man. But this is not necessarily obvious to the other men that she's kissing.
The whole thing is
What do you make
horrible.
about this?
It's horrible. I mean, this ideology is so bad for gay people. It either tells you you've got to date somebody of the opposite sex or you've got to be somebody of the opposite sex.
Yep.
It's so homophobic because homosexuality threatens the whole TQ plus idea because it relies on same-sex attraction.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. A gay dating show that has a girl in it isn't a gay dating show. Yeah. And it's so regressive. It kind of suggests to all the contestants are under pressure to say that they are attracted to this woman, otherwise they'll be branded transphobic and bigoted, even though it's absolutely, natural for them not to be attracted because of their natural homosexuality. I mean, it's terrible for the girl involved as well, because it affirms this delusion that if a girl has her breasts removed and if she has short hair, that gay men will be attracted to her, and that's just false. I mean, and I think worst of all, and this is the thing that is really cynical from the BBC, is that the audience at home, the young men watching, get the message that if they are same-sex attracted, then that's unkind and that's bigoted, and they'll feel that they have to keep their exclusive homosexuality a secret. I mean, do we want in 2025 to go back to the kind of 1950s when men were having unhappy marriages and making their wives unhappy and their families unhappy, all in an effort to pretend that they really were attracted to women? So we hate it. I mean, we've written to Tim Davie and asked that this programme be
chairman.
It's homophobic at its core. It's really manipulative. I feel sorry for the boys in the show. I feel sorry for the girl in the show. I feel sorry for the gay boys watching. I think it's just awful on every count.
Yeah, and again, if it was done the other way around, when you hear women thinking they were with other women, and actually it was a man, I like to think some people might also speak up about that. But again, gay men have been forgotten in all of this and lumped in again with a lot of this agenda. It is extraordinary, and Dannii Minogue certainly has always been, like her sister, a big heroine of the gay scene. And I am very surprised by this. But again, anyone speaking out, obviously transphobic and bigoted, as opposed to no. That's not what we are. That's not who we're attracted to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this sense that being inclusive means that means having no boundaries.
Yeah,
which is really dangerous, particularly when it's aimed at, and this show really is aimed at young people.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of young people recently who tell me that to say I'm a gay man or I'm a lesbian, it's considered to be a kind of a red flag by the LGBTQ plus community, because that in and of itself suggests that you might not be open to dating somebody who's the opposite sex, and that's pretty frowned upon.
It's just extraordinary. The world has gone completely and utterly mad. Well, we know that what you do at LGB Alliance is fantastic work. Kate Barker, thank you for joining us. Sam Armstrong is still in the studio. It is extraordinary. The BBC mainstreams this, but the BBC is bloody obsessed with trans. They will shoehorn trans into anything and everything. But a gay dating show for men, they did a gay dating show for women, so you don't expect women in it. A gay dating show for men should only have men in it. Full stop. What's complicated about that?
Julia, across this country, 10% of all criminal convictions in our courts are against primarily women who are criminalised, who are dragged through the courts, convicted of criminal offence for not paying their TV licence fee. Because we are told that the stuff that this organisation makes is essential to our national debate, our life, our vision. What the hell are they doing commissioning this show in the first place? It seems bizarre. It seems...
We have dating shows. Got no issue with there being a gay dating show.
Oh, but it's online only. Nobody will watch the chuffing thing, and then they have to use it as an instrument to push yet another
agenda. It's like the drag queens constantly for the children's TV.
It's just boring. Yawn. There's a reason that Netflix isn't making this, because no one wants to watch it. We're told we have to have it. We're told we have to pay for it. The lanyard class, as you say, they know better than us. They know what gay men should be attracted to. Yeah. They know what we should find entertaining, and they know that whatever happens, we, muggins over here, should be paying for it.
Exactly. 12:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about the latest miracle achievement from those weight loss jabs. Not only do they help people lose weight, apparently they can halve your risk of cancer too. Are we in danger of finding these drugs a little bit too miracle-y? Is it all really true? We're going to talk to Lawrence Buckman coming up next. This is Talk.
Going to change.
You know, he's got that Meghan thing, and never mind the truth, what about my truth? He still believes that the paparazzi and the press and the media killed his mother. Yeah. And the press and the media had nothing to do with it. I'll tell you who killed his mother. It was that completely drunk chauffeur, the hotel guy from the Ritz in Paris, who drank about 3 bottles of brandy, got behind the wheel of a Mercedes and drove the princess through that tunnel at 120 miles an hour.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, like the nice man said. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong still with me. And let's talk about weight loss jabs, because it turns out not only do they help people lose weight, well, some people, some weight, depends whether you carry on with the weight loss jab or not. We're told they actually halve your risk, or well, cut your risk of loads of different other things, whether or not you lose weight. But now the latest study suggests that according to studies of more than 6,000 obese patients with type 2 diabetes, half of whom given bariatric surgery, so actual surgery to make their stomach smaller, others prescribed weight loss jabs. They found in Israel that while weight loss surgery cut the risk of obesity-related cancer, and an awful lot of fat-related cancers, by up to 42%, the impact of the injections might be even better. So yet another miracle impact from these weight loss jabs. But can it all be too good to be true? Let's talk to Dr. Lawrence Buckman. He's a GP and former chair of the BMA GPs Committee and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Lawrence.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I remember speaking to when these first became the big news and they were trying to get them on the NHS, and the Professor Carl Hennigan of Oxford University looked at the evidence provided by the actual weight loss jab companies of their own trials, which showed actually these weight loss jabs are not particularly successful for many people who take them, but also the moment you stop taking these jabs, you put the weight back on, usually. However, there was this view that even if you didn't lose weight, they had lots of other benefits. This is just the latest a benefit, we're told, these miracle drugs that have been discovered and developed, that halving the risk of cancer. Do you believe it?
I think the headlines have confused losing weight, which reduces cancer risk, from the fat jabs, which may or may not be the cause of the weight loss. In other words, if you lose weight, you will reduce your risk of cancer by up to 45%, depending on the cancer. There are 14 cancers, common ones, that are well known and known to be obesity triggered, and that's been known for a long time. What are those well-known cancers? I can't rattle all 14 off.
No, just a few of them.
Okay, starting with colon and prostate and breast.
Okay, yeah.
But there's plenty of others. And they, we know that if you have the weight loss jab and if you lose weight, your risk of cancer from those related diseases will improve.
Yeah.
What the question is it the weight loss that does it, or is it the drug that does it?
Yeah.
And the other question, which is interconnected, is do the weight loss jabs actually predispose you, to other non-obesity related cancers?
Oh.
In other words, if they make you thinner, are you then exposed to other cancers?
Oh.
Now, nobody has the faintest idea. And to be fair to the study that's just been published today, they say they don't have any idea either.
No, indeed. But it's interesting because there's been some sort of comparisons between different. I think it was Wegovy and oh God, what's the other? I mean, I lose track of which one. Manjaro, and discovering which they have different impacts and they work in similar but slightly different ways, going to have different impacts. But I've always been very sceptical of this, and one of the reasons why I'm sceptical is that the discovery of this drug that's just apparently just such a miracle drug. Oh, everyone loses weight, it's brilliant, and it stays off, and it has all these other benefits. I'm just thinking, like, I no longer, not that I did before COVID, but I certainly just don't trust pharmaceutical companies. I've had plenty of miracle drugs in the past, pretty much all turned out to have some sort of long-term side effects. I don't think they've been around long enough for us to possibly really know what long-term side effects there might be. Also, more and more is coming out about the unpleasant side effects of people using these drugs, but also I find it fascinating that actuaries and pension companies have not adjusted any of their data, any of their payouts and things based on people taking these drugs en masse, living longer because they've lost weight, not having all these extra risks of heart disease and cancer and the like, and therefore living longer, and therefore that adjusting these massive costs for these companies. They've not adjusted them on the basis that people go on these drugs, some people lose weight, they come off these drugs, they put the weight just back on again. So actually, a lot of what we're seeing about these drugs as these miracle cures won't actually turn out in 5 years' time to be quite as good as many people had thought.
Well, that's true. We've all got to die of something. And we're not going to die because we're thinner. Of course, the best solution is don't get overweight in the first place. And that is nothing to do with jabs or anything else. Obesity jabs work for a number of people, and for those people, they appear to be relatively low in side effect profile, but an awful lot of people, they do not work, and there are significant side effects. Whether this new study actually says it's worth having them to lose weight, I suspect the answer is no. I think we should probably be losing weight anyway.
And doing it the healthy way by learning to adjust your diet and moving more and doing the other things which will also have impact on your bone density and things like that because you're exercising, things like that.
Quite so. The main thing is what you put in your mouth. The next main thing is how much you exercise. And if you put the wrong thing in your mouth and then don't exercise, you can't really expect a miracle drug that may have significant side effects to do the work that you could have done and saved yourself money by not consuming.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Lawrence Buckman, GP, former chair of the BMA GPs Committee. I'd like to point out the number of sniggers that I saw from everybody when the phrase "what you put in your mouth." Grow up, everybody. I say, having also sniggered, but there we are. Sam Armstrong Stallers, what do you make of this? I mean, famously, the guy you were working with Robert Jenrick, you're looking at me, he's rolling his eyes. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, when he was running for Tory leadership, and it emerged that he had briefly taken I think Ozempic, but actually didn't agree with him.
Yeah, well, look, what I would say is for him, as I think it made a small contribution in his case, but for a number of people, it has changed their lives.
I know lots of people on it.
Over 1 million people in this country have now taken it.
Yeah, but it only changes your life while you're using it.
Well, I think certainly I know people that have lost 4, 5, 6 stone, and that weight it's quite hard to put back on. And
you'd be surprised. No, all the evidence is actually if people don't do it, if they don't have a complete lifestyle choice, they do not keep the weight off. Most people who lose weight in any way other than a complete lifestyle change put it back on and more.
Look, a lot of people in this country for a long time have struggled with this.
Yep.
They were going to continue to struggle if there is a solution that is as quick as stabbing stabbing themselves in the leg and injecting the stuff. I'm not
willing to give it a go.
Opposed as you are.
Ian Collins is here. I don't think you've always been a fine figure of a man, I'm sure.
Look, I'll say it myself. I'm easy on the eye, Julia. It's as simple as that.
Wow. You see everyone's faces there. Ladies love a bit of Ian Collins.
Oh, come on. I just Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, never seen without a syringe in his pocket, but that's another story.
Well, to be fair, Kevin O'Sullivan is 124.
He's 124.
He's doing very well.
Yeah, he's doing all right, Kevin.
Very well.
Yeah, he's looking good.
Well.
He's looking good on it as well.
Anyway, let's go back to I want to talk to you not about this, but I want to talk about what Keir Starmer had to say. We did play a clip. I didn't play it again because I don't want to send my audience to sleep because it is still always unbelievably hard to listen to Keir Starmer. But do you reckon that he's going to do what he says he's going to do?
The trouble with it all, I was just talking to Theo Ashwood, he'll be on with us shortly, about this. It's not in his belly. It's not in his gut.